Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to what was it, the 79th Comic Art Live get together. Obviously, we've had many more of them than those, but finally started keeping track regularly of all the different shows that we've had. So, welcome everybody to the show. Saw lots of people chatting before we got started. All my regulars, Nick and Marcus and Ruben and Mikhail, and of course, Mr. Rejek, of course, is always in there, and Jordan and Dino. And man, the list can go on and on and on. But going to be a great show tonight. We've got Gene Park is going to be here with me, and we're going to be talking about his amazing collection. I mean, I know many of you have probably been into Gene's calf gallery several times, but I'll put a link into the chat for those of you who've not seen it or might like to follow along and check out his calf gallery while we're talking this evening. Of course, as everybody knows, leave some positive comments tonight in his calf gallery, as well as a thumbs up on stuff that you really enjoy, because Gene has one of my favorite collections on calf. He's an XMen fan just like I am, and somebody whose collection I've long admired. He's been on calf for quite some time. But before we well, you know what, we'll just go and just jump into this conversation, because Gene is in the green room and I don't want to keep him waiting. Hey, Gene, how are you tonight?
Hey, Bill. Doing well, thanks.
Good. Well, so the one thing after we did that X-Men chat a couple weeks ago, and I was really happy to see that you and I kind of are very much in alignment on our favorite X-Men artists. So that was positive to see. I don't think I wasn't expecting that, but I was happy to see. You had Neil in your list as well,
right?
And and I was the only one in the group that had Neil. So I think we see things very similarly as far as our favorite X-Men creators.
Yeah. Adams fans representing. I mean, it was a short run, but really, great run. I mean, that's a run I discovered in 1983 with X-Men Classics, when they reprinted those Baxter reprints. Mm-hmm. And I was just blown away. I mean, the kind of the maturity of that, the level of writing and the sophistication of the art at that time, was just fantastic. And it's definitely stood the test of time. One of my big hobby regrets is not having obtained a page from that run all these years, and time's running out for me to do so, but hope springs eternal.
Exactly. I mean, those pieces are pretty elusive. They don't come up that often. Yeah. And like I said during that show, I felt Neil's, even though it was a short run, it was a gift for those of us who love X-Men. Just the idea that he wanted to tackle that book was really, I don't know. I even though it was a short run, I had to put him on my list, because I've always loved Neil's work. But those stories, while maybe people don't say they're like the best or whatever, the artwork was phenomenal.
It was phenomenal. And I actually liked the stories as well during that short run. I think it was a lot more mature, like I said, more sophisticated than a lot of what came previously during the kind of the earlier parts of the Silver Age. I mean, it's still very, very memorable run for me.
Yep, agreed. And I think we were in alignment on Cockrum and Byrne and Smith as well. And Jim Lee, right? You had Jim Lee too?
I don't remember. He might have snuck in at 5.
He was 5 for me. So, but all right. Well, so enough about that. Maybe some other time we should have you on for a similar show. That we had a really good time on that one, and it's a format.
I did watch that, and I actually Jason had mentioned that maybe I'd be interested in participating, and you got Tatiana, who I thought did a fabulous job, and I think actually really gave a little bit of different perspectives. I was glad that she actually picked one or two of my pieces to highlight, actually. So,
exactly.
No, I thought it went. I could not have done better. So I think you guys did a great job with that.
Okay. Well, if you're ever up for a format like that in the future, I'll always keep you in mind, Gene.
Absolutely.
And I have to tell you, and I was very sincere that you were somebody who's always been on my list since I started doing these. But I think I even said it to you a month ago. I always was taking the low hanging fruit. Anybody that was coming to me saying they want to do an interview, and I was always like, Gene is on my list of like 3 or 4 people that I've got to get on here sometime. And it was just kind of fate that the opportunity came up. So I'm glad that you're here, and I apologize it took so long to get you onto the show.
Oh, no worries. I'm very, very happy to finally be doing this.
All right. So, like we mentioned, or I told you in the green room, we always kind of start the show off with just an overview of how you got involved in your interest in comics, and as well as how that evolved into collecting original art. First opportunity to buy it, and
Sure. So the year was 1983, and I was sharing a paper route in Colorado with a neighborhood kid who collected comics. And at the time, I was collecting more baseball cards, and he introduced me to comics. He was very much into the X-Men and Red Sonja. So those two titles, characters, actually became, my introduction to the comics world. I remember he loaned me a bunch of comics to read, and the first batch included X-Men number 172, which everyone knows that is a very key book in my own collecting origin story. Another one
Hmm.
was Marvel Feature Volume 2, number 1, the first Red Sonja solo title. I remember, I don't remember if it was in the first stack, but kind of the subsequent borrowings included X-Men 125. And this is another cover that I regret not going for, because it was available for many years before finally finding a kind of a more permanent home. Red Sonja Volume 3, number 1, which is by Wilshire, and I think maybe Walt Simonson actually had a hand in that one. I've never seen that original. Would love to pick that one up. But anyway, so I got involved in reading comics that summer or fall, and by the time I started school in the fall, I met another kid who was very much into comics, and he thankfully had X-Men 173, and he loaned that to me, and so I got the full 172, 173 two-parter, which remains like the storyline for me. I mean, it's what hooked me into comics. I mean, it was Wolverine, it was the X-Men, it was ninjas, Japan. I mean, it took you away to these far off worlds, and these mutant powers and ninjas. I mean, martial arts. I mean, it was a huge thing back in the early 80s, and so that's really how I got hooked. And so I actually decided at some point that, maybe I should be buying these for myself. And so I started buying things off the rack with the December 1983 cover date issues. And so that included X-Men 176, Red
Hmm.
Sonja Volume 3, number 3, I think X-Men Annual number 7. So all of these books are just so nostalgic to me from the kind of that portion of 1983, and also going into 1984 with GI Joe 21, obviously, and all the other Walt Simonson Thor,
Hmm.
all these other great runs that were going on at the time: New Mutants, Alpha Flight, New Teen Titans. And so, I would say from like 83 to 86 was I was just going comics like all the time. And then, kind of later on in high school, I started having more time commitments, joined the football team. So comics started to phase out a little bit. And then when I went off to college, at that point, I was just collecting maybe one or two titles a month those years. And then, then starting the job, moving to New York City, wasn't really into comics that heavily. And, let's face it, I mean, kind of the quality level of comics, new comics in the 90s was kind of hit or miss. And by, kind of the 97 or thereabouts, I was like, this is, I don't know, I'm just not feeling it anymore. But then kind of, Marvel had a kind of a renaissance with, the relaunched Daredevil, and then Ultimate
Hmm.
Spider-Man, and those kinds of titles. And then, then eBay. I mean, it was a huge thing. Suddenly you could just get all these back issues and all these comics that you never really had access to unless you went to shows and shops all the time, mail order. And suddenly it was just all there. So at that point, from 99, 2000 on, I was kind of like a kid in a candy store again. And it was in 2002 where I just stumbled upon an eBay listing for Mike Diodato, two-page Electra Splash. And I was like, what is this? I did not know that this entire side of the hobby existed prior to this. And so I ended up winning that. That was the first piece of original art that I ever bought. The second piece was a Vampirella commission by Neil Adams. And then, I spent most of the rest of that decade, exploring various areas of comic art and illustration art. I would say kind of in the early 2010s is when I kind of looked back and said, I'm loving the stuff that I'm buying, but it's kind of all over the place. A little bit of illustration art, some horror art, some superhero art, and I just said, prices are starting to really rise here. I need to probably be more selective, and it makes all the sense in the world to collect the stuff that I love the most. And so that's when I
Hmm.
started looking at more of the Paul Smith X-Men art, John Byrne X-Men art, kind of Miller Daredevil, those kinds of things. And so I would say for from about, call it 2011, 2012 to 2019, I was just going, very, very strongly, collecting those kinds of things. And then, by 2019, I mean, it seems kind of quaint now, but prices had gone up so much. I was like, I'm pretty happy with my collection here, and prices are getting pretty out of hand. I started moving more into just sports cards, and then kind of the pandemic hit, and the sports card hobby really blew up. So I kind of stepped
It did.
aside for the year of 2020 from comic art, but then. After sports cards blew up and then kind of everything became expensive, I've kind of been getting back into it a bit, a little more active in acquisitions of late. For better or worse, because prices compared to 2019 now are just double, triple in many cases. So it's not easy. But I'm still finding things that are interesting to me, and the hobby is still enjoyable, obviously with the social aspects and whatnot. But that's kind of where I am. It's been almost 19 and a half, 20 years now.
So was that first Diodato art on eBay? Was it like miscategorized? Did it end up being in the comic book category, and that's how you
I
stumbled on it?
probably that's what happened, but I don't even remember at this point.
Yeah, yeah. But do you have it still?
I
Ruben
still
wanted to
have it.
know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, so, I've actually had a number of people try to buy it from me, and I think it's just kind of cool to have that first piece. So if I don't need to sell it, why not? I mean, I think it's a pretty interesting piece. It's in my calf gallery, so yeah, I think it's going to be there for a while.
Well, nothing wrong with that. I've held on to my first published piece that I've ever bought. I think I sold the first artwork I ever bought, but I
Mhm.
kept the first published one because that was so special. It was like, I was buying commissions and getting con sketches, but when I finally got turned on to buying a published piece, it was just so important to me. I was like,
Yeah.
wow, this is really where I should be collecting. And I stopped looking at commissions and con sketches as much, and I started focusing on published pieces. But I've sold a lot of pieces, but that was the one I've like knew I will never sell because it means so much to me. It was really like the turning point for me as a collector.
And which piece was that?
It was an Ian Churchill new X-Men page, I
Oh,
believe.
okay.
Nothing special at all, but it was just it was it was an eBay purchase too.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
but and been buying mostly at cons up until that point, but yeah, it meant a lot to me, and it was funny. I actually ended up I bought it, and the guy who was selling it was going to be at like the Pittsburgh Comic Con that weekend, so I ended up picking up direct and having a nice conversation with the seller, and so yeah, just for me, it's a piece I would never sell just because for me it marks a really important moment in my collecting where I just
Right.
realized published works were very important, and kind of like you, I was probably on a 10-year journey too, where about 10 years into it I realized I should be going after things that or I feel like buying things that are more nostalgic for
Hmm.
myself versus just the next, we call them squirrels, out there in the hobby today, chasing squirrels, things that
Yeah.
look good and you end up buying them and then you're like, why did I buy that? I
Exactly. Yeah.
the first 10 years in the hobby, that's really what I did a lot of that.
Hmm.
The last 10 years, and certainly the last 2 or 3 years, I've been more focused on things that are nostalgic or getting good representative pieces from artists that I really admire. I want to have, that's my goal, is to really, all the artists and creators from my childhood. I'd like to have a great piece from each one of them. Not when I say great for me and my budget, but a really nice representative piece from each of those creators, and maybe two or three if a good piece comes up.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's my goal now as a collector, just to really have a well-rounded collection, but focus on that same kind of period for me, which was more very late 70s through the 80s is really the kind of my sweet spot as a collector.
I see.
But so during the, the course of this, I mean, I know that you've had a calf gallery for a long time, but
Yeah. Mhm.
which is great. So you've seen, you've been here as the site's evolved a lot over time. And I know one of the pieces we're going to show off tonight was one of the winners of the best of a few years ago. I think it was one of the cover categories or something, or maybe even, I can't even remember. I'd have to go back and look through the history of our awards. But at any rate, it's you've had a collection that a lot of people have admired. Like somebody said earlier, it's like walking through a museum. So
Well,
when you
thank
say,
you.
yeah, no, but it's true. And there's, unfortunately, we have, I say we're really blessed to have a lot of really stellar collections from people out there. It's
Mhm.
like you can go into Dave Mandel's calf
Yeah.
gallery and spend a whole day in there, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Just admiring the work that's there. But yours is the same, because it seems like, the pieces that you have are always, high caliber, top, they're really at the top shelf pieces of work by and large. And I know that you're when I think everybody knows your chase for the Paul Smith,
Yes.
the
Mhm.
172 book. I mean, that's
Mhm.
been, I know that's probably a long road. But tell us a little bit about that, because a lot of people don't even think to collect a complete issue, or wish that they could.
Yeah.
But what do you can you describe for us, why? I mean, obviously we know why it's the first issue for
Yeah.
you, but as a
Yeah.
collector, how are you approaching that?
Sure, sure. Oh, I mean, just a little bit more of a background. I mean, so as I mentioned, that was the book that hooked me into the hobby, but it didn't just hook me into comics. I mean, I was obsessed by that story. I actually drew in 1984 my own comic, my own ninja samurai comic called The Black Death. And it looked just like X-Men 172. I mean, instead of the silver samurai, there was the red samurai, and there wasn't a Wolverine character. There was a ninja clan instead. But I did that. I even programmed in BASIC, the computer language, kind of like a choose your own adventure based on the story. And so I mean it really had an influence on me on many levels. So when I
Hmm.
started collecting comic art, because I kind of came around it in a haphazard way, kind of discovering it on eBay, and then kind of just, as you said, chasing squirrels for a bit. I don't remember when I got my first page from that issue, but it did. I think it did strike me, kind of at towards the tail end of the 2000s, that wow, it would be really cool to get a page, or even track down the cover to this book.
Hmm.
And so I did some inquiry, made some inquiries. I ultimately did find some pages. I know several of them came from Gary Land. Some of them came, I think, from other dealers. Maybe I had an eBay purchase or two. So I mean that's kind of what happened. And with the cover, I had heard through the grapevine that um, the cover had been gifted as a wedding gift by Paul Smith to one of his friends. And so I kind of wrote it off. I mean, I was able to track down the color guide, and I said to myself, maybe that'll be enough, along with the pages that I can get. But I was kind of frustrated in what was this, maybe 2013, 2014. I was like, a lot of years have passed here. I mean, marriages, sometimes they don't always work, or maybe the guy's sick of the cover, whoever has it. Who knows what the status is. I said, maybe I should make another renewed attempt at finding it.
Hmm.
And I think first, actually, what I did, I think I actually made Dave Mandel an offer for the 173 cover, which is also very important to me. I think that was my first avenue. And when he didn't want to sell that, that's when I said, okay, I've really got to double down on my efforts to find the 172. And so I reached out to Paul Smith directly, and I said, hey, this is what I've heard, that you may have gifted this to someone. And but this is what it means to me. And I explained to him, and look, I'm willing to pay top dollar, and whatever it takes. And he was very kind about it. And he reached out to the owner, and I really don't know what the former owner's situation was, but he was he was amenable to letting it go. So basically, I wanted them to be confident that I wasn't trying to take advantage of them. So I kind of sent them over a list of comps. This is where kind of art from this period, cover art from these
Mm-hmm.
various artists. I mean, some who are perhaps even more higher profile than Paul. This is what they're going for. I mean, it's not cheap, but look, I'm willing to pay a premium to these comps. And I ended up getting in touch with the guy who actually owned the piece, and I said, look, this is what I'm willing to do. And he said, I think maybe there's a deal to be done here. Maybe if we could cut Paul into this as well. And I said, yeah, I'm all for that. I mean, I think that
Sure.
everybody's happy, I'm happy. And yeah, when that thing arrived in my hands, I was like, this is amazing. Like anything else that I get after this would just be gravy. So that I mean, that was probably my most exciting moment in almost 20 years in the comic art hobby.
No, that's I mean, that's a great story. I mean, everybody hears rumors of pieces and things that they like, but you were able to pursue it. Thanks to Paul for even forwarding it along. I'm assuming that the his friend wasn't a regular art collector. This was probably just the only piece of art he had, and maybe he wasn't interested
I don't know
in
if
it
it
as
was the
much.
only piece he had, but yeah, he was not a regular. He has some connection to the art. I think he's a sculptor or something actually.
Oh, okay.
But yeah. So he was willing to let it go, and that worked out. By the way, Bill, I'm seeing all
Yeah.
these comments, and some people are throwing in questions like, is it possible to respond to these, or
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean,
or do
I
I?
was well, you can address them in there. If I probably missed a couple of the questions as they were kind of flying through. I mean, Marcus asking you, so you put a hex on the marriage?
no, no. What? Like I said, I don't know the situation, but whatever was done, he was amenable. So I did not have to twist his arm.
But no, whenever you see somebody make a question or a statement that you'd like to comment to, you just say, hey Marcus, yeah, you're right, or whatever.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I don't always highlight everything that comes through. Sometimes I'll just address it when I see somebody
Okay.
make mention of something.
Very good.
But yeah, feel free. I mean, that's kind of what these are all about. They're very free form.
Mhm.
And you'll see while we're having these conversations, the people in the chat will also start their own side conversations. So
I see.
sometimes
Okay.
it gets a little confusing for us as well. But I mean, did you already have interior pages to the book when you started pursuing the cover?
Yes, I had it at that point. Yeah. I mean, I have a spreadsheet of like when I purchased everything. I mean, I don't remember how many I had, but I did have a number, as I mentioned. Probably the core of that came from Gary Land, but I got ended up getting 2 or 3 pages from the Donnellys and some various other sources. And it's actually been a great experience. I mean, once people got learned that I was trying to put this book together, I would say, look, I mean, there's some people that have pages, don't want to get rid of them, and look, I can respect that. I mean, if, there's certainly things that are outside of this book that I have that I would not want to get rid of, even if
Mm-hmm.
people were trying to complete the book. But by and large, I mean, people have done some very kind things for me. They put me in touch with people that they knew quietly had pages. Look, I got, I mean, I know sometimes get a bit of flack, but like Rich Donnelly has been, extremely kind to me, helped me get a couple of pages on very, very fair terms, I thought. So I mean, and some people have stepped aside as well for pieces that have come up at public auction. So yeah, I mean, I'm very grateful, and it's times like that when you see people kind of rallying around and supporting what you're doing, that it's very heartening. It's been a very heartening thing in the hobby for me.
Sure. I mean, it can kind of work against you too in a certain way as well. I would assume just because other people now everyone knows you're trying to put it together, so sometimes, somebody could say, if they had a page, they might want to get a premium for it because
Yeah.
they know you're trying to complete the book, or maybe even at auction that could make you pay a little bit more sometimes than you might normally want to. But that's when the opportunity's there, you kind of have to go for it.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, last summer there was that page that ended up at Heritage, and it went for multiples of what any other page from the book had done, or any Smith Interior had done previously. So I don't know who jacked it up, and I don't know if they just didn't know, or they just really wanted the piece, or if it was they turned punishment bidding, but. Yeah, look, I wasn't thrilled about that, and people ask me, like, why on earth did you go that high for it? And look, first of all, I love the page, I love the book, obviously, but I also felt in this case that if once you let one go, then people think, oh well, maybe it's fair season on the rest, and I just couldn't let that happen, at least not at that level. I mean, look, maybe there future auction things will get so crazy that I'll have to bow out. But here it pushed me to where I didn't want to go, but where I was still willing to go.
Right. I remember that. I'd made a comment. I mean, I knew you were going after that book, but even when the sale price came out, I don't remember. It was in one of the Heritage recaps where I just said, "Wow, that went at least 40% higher than I was expecting it to go."
Yeah, and I had dinner with Albert and a couple other guys. I think it was last month or the month before, and he told me that sale ruined the Paul Smith market. Now everybody thinks that any page from any issue is just worth huge money. So for everyone else trying to get a page, I apologize.
Well, look at the Zek, Secret Wars pages now.
Yeah, right.
Everybody thinks they're sitting on top of a gold mine now, but yeah, no, those are outliers, of course. But I mean, well, I think that's good, and I would say I've always had a good experience working with Rich. I've done a few deals with him, and I've kind of always said he's my favorite Donnelly, because at the end of the day, he's a pretty nice guy, and I've seen him in lots of different situations at shows with other collectors and dealers doing deals, and yeah, he's always been fair, at least in his dealings with me. And so somebody wanted to know, how many more pages do you need to complete the book?
Oh, I think so. I have the cover, and I think I have 15 pages, maybe 14, maybe 16, around 15 pages. So there's roughly 7 pages left.
All right. Do you know where they are?
I know where a couple are. I mean, I kind of have some inside information on where others might be, but the problem is, I mean, obviously I've reached out to the ones that are known publicly, that and they just, I mean, one of them I've approached many times, and ever increasing offers, and every time he seems blown away by the offers, but he just doesn't want to let it go. And hey, if it means that enough to him that he's able to resist, and more power to him. But I offer him trade and cash and just whatever, but it unfortunately has not come to pass yet. And then there are some people that are kind of, I hear through the grapevine, might have a page, but these are people that I know that surely they know that I'm looking for it, and if they were willing to let it go, they would have reached out. So
they probably reach out to you.
Yeah. So I'm not going to bug them about that. They know that I'm sure they know that if they got hit by a bus, or if they ever wanted to sell, then please, they come to me first. But in the meantime, I'm not afraid of them going elsewhere.
Right. So you did pick up some of these pages from Gary?
Yeah. I don't know if I picked up the first pages from Gary, but I did pick up a core group of them. Yeah.
Well, that's good. I mean, Gary obviously controlled the Paul Smith market all by himself for a very long time. And it was so frustrating because, I have never owned a Paul Smith X-Men, but back, 15 years ago, that was about the time when I was like, I really got to get one. And every single time one would come up on eBay, and early on, I bid up to $2,500, and I'd still miss out. And it was always to Gary. And then every successive auction, I'd be like, all right, I'm going to go to $3,300 next one. I'm going to go to $3,800 on the next one. I'm going to overpay. And every time Gary beat me on every single one of those.
Right.
It was so frustrating, and Gary, he and I always got along, but he didn't know half the time that it was me he was bidding against. But it just shows you. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it's like, it was an interesting dynamic, because one person controlling that much artwork from a run like that, it made it really difficult. It raised the price level of the pieces more than they should have at the time, because he was going to, he had so many of them, he was willing to overpay to keep them with him. And then at the same time, by doing that, then he was driving up the price of the market, because nobody could touch those pages. So it was a very interesting economic situation going on, and with in the hobby, that everybody kind of does that, right? If you love John Romita Jr. X-Men, and you have a lot of them, it's in your best interest to make sure that they always sell for a good price, right? So you're going to be a player on pages, and so it keeps things up. But that was like a small area of comic history there with just Paul Smith X-Men, and Gary just had it all locked up, and it was it was a very frustrating time for those of us who were trying to get a page out of him. But again, so that's why kudos to you for getting the pages from him, because for the longest time it felt like he wouldn't really sell any. I know that in the last 10 years he's been letting go of a few more things. I think he's working for Comic Connect or Metropolis.
Right
now. So who knows? But yeah, again, I just wanted to bring that up, because for a lot of people who maybe are new to the hobby or haven't really been after Paul Smith X-Men for a long time, like clearly both of us have been, they might not have known about that little bit of history in there. And I have nothing but good things to say about Gary, but it was just an interesting moment, where it's just like you could say Mike Berkey, it's in his best interest to make sure Romita Spider-Man are always right. I mean, so he'll be a player when need be, if he thinks something might go low. I mean, he always says stuff about the he goes, so sketchograph cards sell for $600, when John Romita Sr. draws a Mary Jane. Well, maybe he's the underbidder on them to make sure they always end up at $600. I don't know.
Right.
But, it's kind of how the hobby works. And it's, but, because a person looking at that kind of stuff just says, well, if I can't own it for that, then at least I made sure it's going to keep, the value is going to continue to stay stable. Or because I remember, Gary, there was that point in time when somebody sold a lot of, what was it? Crisis pages. There was a big Crisis question. I think Gary was involved in that too. And I remember there was a point in time when Crisis pages on eBay were really hard to get. And then there was that influx of, I don't know, it was like 60, 70 pages came onto the market all at one time. And it was like one of the rare times in my, in my, at least viewing prices and the economy of collecting original art, where the price actually went down. You could actually, instead of being, say, in the $750 or $850 range that they were, you started seeing them drop down to like $550 and $650. And
I see. Yeah,
it was an interesting moment. But Paul Smith art has never had that luxury,
no,
unfortunately.
My one Gary, tangentially Gary anecdote is I do have a very big regret. So Gary at one point owned the cover to X-Men 175, which is a lot of people's favorite cover from or certainly one of the top 3 in most people's rankings. And got that hit eBay, and I was just on vacation overseas and not checking eBay religiously at the time. And boy, when I came back and saw that it had sold, wow, that really annoyed me. I'm glad it went to a good home, someone I know who really appreciates it, but boy, that is one I would love to have back. Because if I had seen that, I would have snapped that up instantly. Yeah,
eBay, sometimes is good for that, right? I mean, some of those pieces that just kind of sneak through. I'm so envious of people who get these, great pickups from eBay, even today, because we track the market data on there. So, and I just don't do the watches and the things that so many people do to find, when a great buy it now piece might pop up.
Yeah.
I only see it after the fact when we do the market reporting, because I've been able to get a data dump from them every week. And sometimes I'm like, my God, that piece, it wasn't even live, on the site for more than 10 minutes.
I know.
But yeah, the chat's very active this evening. It was not Gary Coleman, whoever thought of that. It was Gary Land. So, but yeah, they're very active in there. Ron Lim, yes, we remember your issues with Gary. But I mean, hey, it's the Comic Ardell was a fun place back in the day. I mean, it was all we had. I mean, even with CAF, I never built CAF to have any real social components to it other than the comments and things like that. So I always felt that the Comic Ardell was kind of enough when it was that mailing list format.
Yeah,
it was it was different, but it worked well. I mean, it was, for the longest time, it was the only thing people had until the CGC forums rolled around. But I always just felt like, and then after I saw the CGC forums, I'm like, I don't want to do a forums on CAF. I mean, we have them, but I never wanted that to be our focus. So the Comic Ardell, I really do. If it wasn't for that, I don't know where I'd be as a collector. I mean, I might have dropped out at early on, because those early days, like you said, around what was it, 2002 ish, for your first purchase. I mean, that was all we had to kind of commiserate and try to understand. I remember asking stupid questions like, is it okay to have masking tape holding my DPS together? I didn't know. I mean, I remember, and but again, I was so naive, but those are the dumb questions that we all have, early on in the hobby. But at least we had a place to ask them in the Comic Ardell. I mean, so I think a lot of collectors probably owe a bit of a debt of gratitude to and Gary was the one who was instrumental, at least early on, keeping it going. Brian Peck, of course, he was always a moderator. I mean, I think Ray Cuthbert was as well. I mean, lots of guys really took up the mantle of keeping that thing going. But again, Gary, I don't know. Gary has his place in comic art collecting history solidified for many things. But Paul Smith XMen, and as somebody else pointed out earlier, Excalibur, which I can tell you, I know nothing about, since I've never read it. But Tatiana sent me a trade paperback, so I have to read it now. But but I remember Gary bought a lot of Excalibur artwork too. So yeah, he was a big fan. Yes, and the Lowry. We can talk about the Lowry another day, everybody. But I did find, I'll just show this momentarily here, because a couple other people were pointing it out as well. So from the best of collected artwork from 2019, your cover entry, which is right on the wall to your right.
It is, yes.
That Bill Sienkiewicz cover won the best cover award. Of course, it was a no prize back in 2019, but as you can see, yep, it did definitely win. And somebody with sharp eyes noted that it is hanging on the wall.
I wonder if I can.
Man, you get to look at that every single day.
Yeah,
Gene.
And
That's
amazing.
It
is huge, which I really like about it.
Man, I'm very jealous. I mean, that's after a Paul Smith XMen, I want a Bill Sienkiewicz New Mutants page. And then I think if I had those two things, I wouldn't say my collecting life would be complete, but those are high on my list, because I've already had to kind of move Byrne off of my want list. I don't think I can be a player there, and I might be a player in second run Cockrum now, but I'm not a player in the first run.
Yeah,
so,
it's gone crazy.
It has, but Sienkiewicz and Paul Smith, I mean, I can still try. I can dream. I actually, you know what? That's funny. I actually did get a Paul Smith page from Mike Berkey. I got it for $500. It was the first page to the X-Men and Alpha Flight.
Alpha Flight, yeah.
But it's almost all not. It's a stat of an airplane, and the only real art on it, other than Tom, I can never pronounce his last name, is great lettering.
Oh yeah,
begins with an O.
Orzechowski.
Thank you. I mean, it's got his lettering on it, but then it's got just some big clouds on it. So it's Paul might not have even touched that page, but at least I've got the title page, and it says it's got Paul Smith art.
Okay.
So I can be happy for that. Yeah, like Rick Welch just said, awesome clouds. They are the best clouds in my collection, without question.
It's funny you should mention X-Men Alpha Flight, because I actually had a bit of a mishap this week. I was going through my Paul Smith folder, and I have an X-Men Alpha Flight page, and I hadn't looked at it for a while, and I pulled it out, and suddenly the whole thing just started falling apart. And because it was actually done in 3 sections, and it was kind of taped with taped on the back, and the tape had all dried out, so it literally just collapsed. So then I canvassed all my comic art collecting friends, like, what kind of tape do I need for this and stuff, as you mentioned, used to do on like on the L. And
Mhm.
so I was able to find some artist tape, non-acidic, archival, and put it back together. So it's fine now, but there was a brief moment of panic when I saw this page just literally like disintegrating in front of my eyes as I was pulling it
Oh
out of
yeah.
the folder.
The other day I came into my office and I found a word balloon on the floor, and I don't for the life I don't know what it was from.
That
So,
is
so
annoying. Yeah.
that is so yeah. I mean, I've just set it up on the bookshelf. I'm like, boy, I've got to go back through the portfolios to figure out where this one came from, because I was like moving some stuff around to kind of organize things, but I don't recognize what it came from, and that's kind of the hazard when you don't bag. I use iToyas, but
Mm.
I in a lot of, I'd say like 20 to 30% of my artwork I have not put into a bag before
Yeah.
putting it in there. And now I'm really regretting that, because I mean, just a situation like that where I clearly, if I would have had it in a bag, at least it would
Hmm.
still be with it. And
Right.
I'm really going to have to go back through my collection and look at everything that has any kind of pasted up word balloons and make sure that I get them in bags so that that never happens. And oh, there you go. Fish has made a super chat tonight saying support whatever habit Bill wants. Thank you very much, Fish. I do appreciate that a lot. I'll take that $30 to Heroes in a few months, and we'll all have a drink or something together. But yes, it's so sorry. I'm just trying to read through the chat
Yeah.
here as well. But I know word balloons are the bane of many collectors' existences too. I mean, because I go over to Berkey's like once a month, and I find word balloons over there all the time. He sold a Prince Valiant. I can't even remember who the artist was on it, but somebody might remember it in the chat like a month ago, and it didn't have the word balloon on it, even on the scan that he did. And he mailed it out, and I think I came over like maybe a couple days after he mailed it out, and I found it. It was like sitting
Okay.
on in between a stack of stuff. I'm like, hey, look, it's a Prince Valiant. He's like, oh my god, that's the one from the cover, or that from the Sunday I
Yeah.
just sold the other day. And he's like, oh, I got to get it back in the mail to that guy. So yeah, word balloons are bad news if you're not bagging your artwork.
You know
So
what's worse than word balloons, though?
tell me.
Loose pieces of zipatone. Like, oh my God, you find that on the floor and you have like no idea where that came from in most cases.
I have had a few Zipatone issues in the past as well. I know, but yeah, that's true. Look, we're taking this conversation so far away from you as a
I know,
collector,
I
but
know.
this is good. I mean, these are things that might not normally come up in a collector chat that we're
Mhm.
doing, but yeah, they're all thoughtful things. It's something because I was emailing with a collector a couple days ago who was and they were asking me they're new to the hobby and really asking me storage things. What are my recommendations, and I just told them about Itoyas, and I told them about bags, but I didn't really. Now I feel like I should have stressed the idea that even if you use an Itoya, you really gotta bag it as well,
Right.
just because it's really in your best interest to have the art like that, because you just never know what'll
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
Uh, and Rich tells me if I post the word balloon that somebody will be able to help me identify it. I don't know. This was a really, really tiny word balloon. I'll be perfectly honest. So let's talk more about collecting. So we've touched on the 172.
Mhm.
So I guess nostalgic wise, I mean, what other books are I know that we're gonna see a Red Sonja piece as well
Yeah.
when we
Yeah.
just look at the art. But are there any other really hot items that you're looking for that you haven't even scratched that itch? It's out there, but you just haven't seen anything from it that you'd really like to get. You mentioned Neil Adams earlier. I guess that might
Yeah.
be one of
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, like a Neil Adams X-Men page would kind of be on that short list. I mean, I have several Ditko Spider-Man pages, which I, discuss later on. But that was obviously when it first came out. It was before my time, but I read all that stuff through Marvel Tales, the reprints in the '80s. Unfortunately, the three pages of Ditko that I have don't have him in costume. I mean, they're
Hmm.
otherwise important pages, but I would like, still holding out some hope that I end up with a good costume Ditko Spidey page one day. Simonson Thor, obviously. I mean, I have a whole long story which I won't bore you with, but I mean, there's a kind of an incident in my collecting life that involved my dad and stuff, and because of that, like Thor 339 is just a super nostalgic thing. Like if I could have like anything that I don't have in the hobby already, I don't know if it'd be number one, but it'd be definitely be like one of the top three things. The cover to Thor 339 as a result. So I mean, I think that's kind of what's kind of still left on the list. And you know, Simonson may never sell his stuff, so it may be a moot point, and with prices where they are, it may all be a moot point. But those are the things that kind of that I don't have that are still very nostalgic to me that wouldn't mind adding.
Nope, I can't. I'd love a Thor Simonson page of any kind. I mean, really. I mean, because it was, for me, it was X-Men and Thor. Those were my two big ones, and it was really Thor even before I got into X-Men. When I first collecting it, I don't know, it was the long hair and everything. It just worked for me. But Thor was great, and when I started, Thor was like the first comic book where I actually had gotten caught up and got the whole run. You know, and even before I finished my X-Men run in comics, I did Thor first, just because I just loved the stories. They were fun, and I loved, you know, Loki was always cool. I mean, there were just so many great storylines and characterizations from that book, even you know, from the beginning, that just made it so fun. And but then when Walt came in, he turned everything on its head, broke the logo, all that fun stuff. I loved him for it. You know, I was mad at first, and then I was like, this guy is. Well, again, it's like, what a gift. It's like having Neil Adams on X-Men for a little bit. It was a great gift to have Simonson on Thor for as long as he wanted, and he can revisit it whenever he wants. But you know what? We should probably start looking at
let's start with the art. I know there's a lot of people clamoring for it in the chat here.
Yes, and I know that it's been, like, Brian asked about it, and Ruben's re-asking, you know, about the Vampirella. So I know that's something we'll talk about again, because you do have you did bring a piece of Vampirella artwork, but that's not what we're starting with. But we'll get there, everybody. So we'll answer your questions on that, and even we'll talk a little bit more about Ditko, I'm sure. But we're going to start off with something a little bit different. A beautiful Judge Dredd cover.
Judge Dredd 22, the Eagle series by Brian Bolland from 1985. I mean, so like I said, I started collecting comics in 1983, and you know, Eagle started reprinting the 2080 stories, you know, stateside. I think it was late 83 or thereabouts. And so, you know, I started, you know, the early 80s were just an amazing time for kind of non-Marvel DC art, and you know, Eagle was one of the things that definitely caught my eye. I didn't pick up the whole run, but I did pick up you know, issue 1 and 2, 1, 2, 3 or whatever. But then when they got to then I kind of let it go for a while, and then I got back into it with issue 18, which was the part 1 of a 2-part story called Block War, which leads into the what I consider to be the ultimate Judge Dredd story, the Apocalypse War, all drawn by Brian. And the art is amazing. The story is, you know, beyond amazing. I mean, this is I keep saying this is one of the stories from the 80s that I think, because it's not Marvel and DC, a lot of people haven't read. But boy, I mean, these are the Judge Dredd stories to read. I mean, this is and especially reading it at that time. I mean, the Apocalypse War pits Mega City 1 and its allies, who actually kind of abandoned Mega City 1 against the forces of East Meg, which is kind of a representation of the Soviet Union in the Dredd future. And so, I mean, with all the Cold War hysteria of kind of 1985, I mean, it was just the perfect story at the perfect time. And I have read it, you know, 1 or 2 times since then as well. And to me, it still holds up. I mean, it's just got so many incredible moments, and the art is amazing. And I always wanted a ball and cover from the series. I tried to get the one, lost out to Dave, and you know, I think somebody else was also slightly ahead of me as well. But if I said, you know, if I can't get the one, I would love to get either the 19 or the 22. The 19 is part 2 of Block War, and the 22 is obviously a part of the Apocalypse War saga. And you know, out of nowhere, this cover popped up as part of Harlan Ellison, you know, the science fiction writers collection, and he had kind of through an intermediary, a friend of mine in the hobby was kind of testing the water, I think, on certain pieces. And when I saw this piece, I was like, wow. I let the number one get away, but this one I will not. So I quickly locked this up, and the cover represents uh, basically the Mega City One forces have knocked out their own weather system, because weather is controlled by man in the future, to kind of slow down the tanks and everything from the Soviets or the East Meg One forces, and that's what's happening on the cover. So it's not just a generic cover of him kind of yelling in the snow. It's him rallying the troops in the snow that they have created to slow down the Soviet onslaught. And I mean, it's very, very powerful, very detailed. I mean, I just think it's a beautiful cover that encapsulates the story very well. So I am very, very happy to have this one.
Yeah, no, this is a beauty. I hate to say it, I did not read that storyline of Dread, so now you've sold me. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go out and read it now.
It's out there. I do have it in both pamphlets and in trade, so you will be able to find it.
All right, good. No, it's I love Judge Dredd. I was gifted my first page of 2000 AD artwork a few months ago, and because it's I see it. That I've worked with Rufus Dayglow on his side. And I know that Joseph represents Brian, but you never see anything over
Right.
on Brit Comics art at all. But so it's hard to come by, at least here in the States. But it's like, that's you got a beauty there. I mean, anything by Brian is would be wonderful to have in someone's collection, even if it was just a prelim. But I mean, to have a published cover of that caliber, it's just wow. I mean, I'm very envious. I have a friend who has a really nice like Animal Man cover, and I've gotten to see it a few times, and it's always just striking to see his work in person. Especially on the covers, just nice splash pages and things. But I've seen some of his interior work for 2000 AD, some Twice Up stuff, and it's mind blowing what an amazing talent he is.
Yeah, and here it is. I don't know if you can. It's kind of the reflection from the
man, amazing. Yeah, no. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Let's see. Reading through here. Let's take a look at the next piece. This is John Byrne. Very envious of this one.
Yeah, so this piece, so like I said, kind of when I was trying to refocus on collecting the stuff that really meant the most to me, obviously I looked back immediately to the X-Men, and by the year was 2013, if I recall correctly, and 2012 or 2013, and prices, when I started collecting, I mean, you could get Byrne pages for 3,000. I mean, they weren't cheap, but they were kind of in that price range. But then, fast forward to the beginning, early years of the following decade, and boy, I mean, things were really starting to ramp up. And it was at this point I said, I need to lock something down, but I'm very specific. I mean, it's got to be obviously it's got to be Byrne Austin, and it's got to have lots of Wolverine. It was basically what it came down to. And I came across a great Days of Future Past page that I was very tempted to make that, kind of that the piece that I would get to that could be the one and done. I mean, in the event that I wouldn't be able to find anything else. And thankfully I kind of had this this thought in my mind that hey, I just love this page from X-Men 109 that was owned by my friend Chris Kyra. And so I just decided on a whim, before I kind of move along with this other potential deal, I'm gonna hit Chris up. And that proved to be very faithful, not just because it ultimately allowed me to get this page, but Chris at the time was building his own house, and so obviously had a lot of bills to pay related to that. And So yeah, I mean, we were able to come up with a deal for this page. I mean, I flew to Chicago to pick it up, and it's yeah, it's one of my favorite pieces in my collection. And it's just amazing. It's kind of in that earlier, I mean, Burn Austin style. I mean, it's not quite as polished as what you see in the later storylines. But it's amazing. I mean, first of all, I'm also a huge Alpha Flight fan, so this is obviously the first appearance issue for Weapon Alpha, who becomes Vindicator and then Guardian. And look, I mean, you have that beautiful top panel and the close up in the second panel, and that third panel. I mean, it's just so the claws out. I mean, it's just a amazing Wolverine image. It's been used on various other merchandising. I know there's an X-Men pop-up book where that's the cover, and then I might even like that splashy fourth panel the best, even though Wolverine's back is turned. I mean, it's just so dynamic. I mean, you can feel him, the speed and the power and just the savage fury going after who's ostensibly his friend here. I mean, it's just a great page, and I'm very thankful to Chris for letting it go to me. And yeah, I frankly don't see myself ever parting with this one.
Nope, I don't blame you. And I actually owned probably like 5 Burn X-Men pages in my time. Yeah, I sold them, but regrettably. But but you're right. I mean, probably like 15, 16 years ago, you could get a decent Burn page for $2,500.
Yeah,
in that range. I mean, I know, and it was a lot of money back then too. But at that time, I actually had like 3 businesses that were all doing really well, so I felt like I always had funny money floating around. Believe it, back in that day, CAF was the funny money. It's like if anything came in from there, I just used that to further my art collection, and it worked well because again, Burn X-Men pages were around 2,500. Frank Miller Daredevil pages were probably around 18 to 22, and you could pretty much get anything you wanted. And I never bought a Miller page, unfortunately, but I would have sold it if I had. But
those were
so I'm very so yeah. But see, I'll be honest, I actually kind of prefer that unpolished stage between Burn and Austin. I really like the early issues a bit more than the later ones where they were, I mean, they were still great together, but I love that early work, like the Savage Land issues, that kind of period. It's really, it's because it still looks like they're figuring things out a bit, or Terry's trying to figure out how to ink John properly. But I don't know, there's something about that style and just the way, just because whenever I look at those pages, I actually can really visualize like the printed book too, and I'm just like, man, there's about those stories and the way the art was done that I really like them a lot. And so for you to have that page, an early page like that, is that's my sweet spot as far as Burn Austin goes. So
nice. And here is the actual page.
Yeah, I was look at that. It's just amazing. And that's the thing, we can look at the stuff on the screen, but you don't really get the full. I mean, just looking at that, the top panel and the bottom panel, how large they really are, I mean, because when we're just looking at the slide, it just doesn't have the same feel. But I mean, art needs to be held and looked at. I mean, to really be fully appreciated. I mean, it's one thing for us to be doing it here, but yeah, you got to see it in person. We've been talking a lot about doing art get-togethers. Those are really, and going to shows. That's really where you get the best, view of the art and be able to appreciate it for everything that it is.
Yeah.
And one anecdotal thing, though, I remember Chris was always, he was always with Bolland too, right? So,
right.
And so we let off with a Bolland, and then Chris ended up falling into the second story. So I think that's good. I always remember.
And Chris will make an additional appearance later in another piece when we talk.
Chris is a very, I have yet to. I've emailed him a couple times. He never replies when I ask him if he wants to be on the show. Maybe all my emails are going to spam with him. I'm going to have to kind of push him a little bit because I mean, he's a pretty influential, collector in the hobby, and did a lot of interesting things. Kind of did things his own way, even with his commission theme and everything. I'd love to. I'm gonna have to work on him a little bit, see if I can't get him on the show.
I'll put in a word, see if we can get him.
Please do, because maybe my emails are going into his spam. I mean, I don't think I've emailed with him in probably 10 years, but I have tried that. Like once about a year ago, and then again I sent a reminder like 6 months ago, and I never got a reply. But all right, let's keep looking at some art here, because we're going to stick to the X-Men with this again. A great artwork by Cockrum, and again, this is probably one of my favorite issues from the early X-Men run. I mean, I just love this one to death, and I love this page.
Yeah, I love this page too. I mean, this is actually the second early Cockrum X-Men page that I got. I mean, the first page, just a little anecdote, because a lot of people are tuning in are probably newer to the hobby. But the first one that I got, which I still have, it's not currently on my calf gallery. It's the splash to X-Men 100. And I think in this super, super hot market, it's kind of hard for people to imagine, but that X-Men 100 splash, which is a fantastic splash, the old X-Men versus the new X-Men, it just kind of, I mean, look, whoever owned it previously had priced it a bit too high, but it just kind of sat there and sat there and sat there. And art, I've noticed it happening more kind of in the older days than it does nowadays, because anything good seems to just fly off the shelf. But art had a tendency to get kind of stale and worn out, and even great pieces like the X-Men 100 splash, and also happened with another piece that's going to come up later in this discussion, just kind of got overlooked. And so I was able to get that for a very good price. And then this page, my friend Ken Rogers, who's now the CEO of Mice Labs, he really has, I mean, look, Ken always was able to pick up some nice things, but unlike some people, he didn't have like an unlimited budget, and he managed kind of at the peak of his collecting to acquire just some very visually, just appealing pages. Like I would always tell, I still tell him, like, I feel like he has like among the best eyes of anyone in the hobby, because what he did on his budget, the examples that he was able to find and collect and kind of curate were just amazing. And anyway, this was one of the pieces that he got. I mean, it's an amazing page, X-Men 102. The X-Men, after, they're in outer space and they had all that drama in issues 100 and 101. They came back to Earth. They went on vacation in Ireland, only to find out that the Juggernaut and Black Tom Cassidy had set a trap for them. And so issue 102 starts off with them, in a full battle. So, I mean, you got the top panel here with Storm having kind of a panic attack due to her claustrophobia. And then the X-Men kind of, not prepared for this and bickering among themselves. And then Wolverine gets this great idea. He's going to do, I mean, it's not quite a reverse fastball special, but he's decided he's going to hurl Colossus into the Juggernaut. And the way Cockrum draws this, I mean, it's just so dynamic. I mean, it's almost like 3D, kind of that last panel, the second to last panel at the bottom. And then just all the motion lines, the impact lines, and the sound effects in that last panels as he crashes into the Juggernaut. I mean, it's just a great page. And for a long time, I mean, it's still true to some extent, but these Cockrum pages were really not trading, selling for a big discount to the Byrne pages. And
they were,
and you look at a page like this and you kind of wonder why, because this is early, important, and I mean, it's just, frankly, I mean, it's a spectacular page. But I remember this page and pages kind of comparable quality going for like 15 when Byrne pages were like 25, 30. And obviously now this, these are, prices have obviously escalated a lot, but for a while, these were you could have gotten pages for for prices that were attainable for a lot of people.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I always wondered when Cockrum was going to kind of get his due, I mean, because his artwork was always for me undervalued. I mean, even when I, couldn't afford it, a few years ago when I was kind of in between successes, I guess, I was always disappointed that, Cockrum's work wasn't really, reaching the crazy prices that you were seeing Byrne's artwork reach. So I'm pleased. I mean, I'm priced out of it now, but I feel like, you know, he's finally, you know, getting the recognition that he deserves, and collectors are seeing the, you know, the value, you know, that, you know, I mean, his work was just so great. I mean, he was great at costumes. I mean, he
Yeah.
created, you know, he put a lot of effort into three of these characters here with Storm and Colossus and Nightcrawler. I
Nightcrawler, yep.
mean, so, you know, I mean, we owe Cockrum so much, and
Oh, yes.
you know, for his contribution to comic storytelling. And, you know, I wish he drew for Marvel more. You know, at the
Yeah,
end of the day, I
absolutely.
mean, he really, you know, he did a lot. He did Soul Searchers or whatever that book was. He did a few things on his own, but I mean, if I wish he would have even just spent every hour that he could on Marvel books, because, you know, that was my Marvel's my thing. But yeah, this is a great page. I mean, it's, again, probably my favorite story from the first 12 issues of Uncanny and everything. So this is great. Love it. Absolutely. And
Uh,
good thing that Ken was picking up those pieces, right? I mean, because it made
yeah.
it available to you. And you know, I didn't know anything about My Slabs until recently, so I actually checked it out. I mean, it's a great
Oh,
idea. I mean, it's
yeah.
really, really a wonderful
Absolutely.
idea. I mean, we need more people who are forward thinking like that, doing cool things. And you've
Right.
got the artwork in hand.
I do have the artwork to this page, so
Oh man. See, again, it's like, you know, we've just been looking at that thing for 5 minutes on the screen, and then you see how large that the last panel is.
yeah.
Gosh, that is just amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. All right, but at this rate, we're going to be here for 3 hours. But I'm enjoying every minute of it. So
I'm loving this. So this is fun.
all right, let's look at yeah. So this is a complete detour a little bit, but I mean, who didn't? You know, when I, even before I got serious about collecting comics, I was always drawing as a kid, and there were a lot of cool pulp collection books out there. I remember in the mid '70s, and I just loved, you know, seeing images like this. I mean, you know, it's gruesome, but at the end of the day, I mean, this is the kind of imagery that well, probably made us all need to have the comics code at some point, right?
Right.
but
Right.
but I mean, to me, this was like the coolest thing. You know, I remember drawing pictures of you know, zombie hands coming up from the ground to grab a car. You know, that sort of stuff. I mean, just because this was the imagery that I would see in these pulp collection books that I don't even know why my parents let me have them, but
Mhm.
when I was 8 or 9. But this is just, you know, gorgeous. And of course, it's by Johnny Craig. So and it's Vault of Horror issue 30. So
Issue
tell me
30,
a
yeah.
little bit about. I mean, this is a very, you know, big diversion from your other pieces that you've collected.
Yeah, but like I said, or like as we've been talking about, a lot of what both of us are interested in is nostalgia. And when you
Mm-hmm.
think of nostalgia, you might, for kind of people of our generation, you might not think of horror comics from the you know, the 1950s, but uh, I was introduced to you know, these EC horror comics through the Gladstone reprints from the 1980s. So I actually did read these when I was you know, as a teenager, and really enjoyed the stories. And I think they're you know, I've also, you know, I think even preceding my interest in comic books, I was into Mad Magazine and the paperbacks, and I think I want to say at some point that I even got some paperbacks that kind of reprinted some of these issues, because I remember there's a piece that's I believe in Jim Halpern's collection now that has the kind of the two-headed creature and the zombie who made it and created the, you know, one of the Crypt Keeper, one of these the
I think
mascot
I know which piece you're
characters.
talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, and but I remember that was I read that I want to say it was like a black and white reprint paperback book, and so I mean, so I was always in the 80s. I was very interested in this kind of material. I never really thought about you know, going out to acquire one, but I always loved the art and the stories, and an interesting situation popped up. I think it was 2010, maybe 2011. Collector slash dealer now, Glenn Brunswick, actually had this cover. He also had the Amazing Spider-Man 83 cover. And I looked at the two together and I was like, wow, you know, I really like the Spidey cover, but you know, and I at the time I really wanted a pre 100 Spidey cover, but I was like, wow, I think I really like this this Vault of Horror cover even more, and so I proposed a kind of a package deal for the two, and was working on, I believe, some other deal, and so kind of it became one of those win-win situations. I mean, we agreed on a price that I was very happy with, and he took that money and bought something that he was very happy with, and that kind of all comes full circle when we talk about another piece that I believe is on the agenda. But yeah, I mean, I got those two covers around 2010, 11, and this cover is actually my wife's favorite piece of art in my entire collection. I mean, it's quality. I mean, you can see the cleverness, the time period, the history. And unfortunately, I don't have it accessible to me right now. But I mean, obviously, it's twice up and huge. Presents very well, and yeah, I mean, I just love it, and I'm glad. I mean, with so many of these great covers having kind of migrated over the years into just a small handful of collections, I am very pleased that I have managed to keep this cover, because I mean, what else are you going to get at this point? I mean, there are not that many of these great EC horror covers that are still available, and there's been individuals that have tried to pry this loose, and look, I mean, at my weak points, I was. I have to admit, tempted, but thankfully, I mean, I managed to hold on through those times, and now I can't imagine parting with it. It's just one of my favorite pieces.
Oh, no, I don't blame you, but I'm surprised that this is the piece that is your wife's favorite. Somebody asked too, is she a horror fan? Does she, is that her movie genre of choice?
She's actually very I mean, she does not like modern horror movies or anything like that, really scary, gory stuff, but I think she has appreciation of the classics,
Mhm.
the Universal movies, the Hammer horror films. She's
Yeah.
from the UK, and I think stuff like this. I mean, it's gory, but it's kind of, you can see whether the context it's in. I mean, it's not really frightening or anything to an adult. So I think she just appreciates the history and kind of what it is, what they were doing at the time, and like I said, and it's beautiful, and it presents just so well.
Yeah, my wife will not let me buy. Well, she won't let me display any artwork with skulls on it. That's. She's like, you can buy them all you want, but they have to stay in the portfolio. I'm like, but most of the best art that I could buy has a skull on it. She's like, nope, can't have it. So that's why I put the Thor. I keep the Thor helmet in the back here
Okay.
on a skull. That was my father bought that like years ago. It's actually like a piggy bank actually,
Okay.
but he put it on the TV one night when he came home from work, and I was already in bed. And I remember waking up the next morning and going out, first one out, and I see that skull on the top of the television set, and I ran back in my room and was under the covers until somebody else woke up in the house. So I will always remember that from my father messing around with his
Yeah.
like 5-year-old son to do something like that to him. Scared the heck out of me, but no, I think that's great. And again, you can't replace a piece of art like that right now.
Right.
Yeah, I would hold on to that one until you were forced to do something with it. But
Yeah.
hopefully that never happens. Now, this next one, I actually put two pieces of art together.
Okay. Yeah.
And because they're consecutive from Uncanny X-Men 213, pages 19 and 20.
Yeah. So Alan Davis, this is the concluding issue of the Mutant Massacre, X-Men 213, cover date January 1987. And to me, this is important to me because I consider this to be kind of the last issue of my personal golden age of collecting comics. I mean, look, obviously there was this great silver age and a bronze age and a modern age as well, but kind of that earliest period of my collecting comics, like I said, it started in 1983, and I feel like it ended in January 1987 with this issue. I mean, I loved the Paul Smith X-Men run. I know a lot of people didn't love the John Romita Jr. run that followed, but I mean, it was very new to me, and I have very fond memories of that stuff. And when they started the Mutant Massacre storylines, and then with all the crossovers, I think it started in X-Men 210. It was a big deal. I mean, there were rumors that people would be killed off permanently, which I don't think actually was the case with any of the principal X-Men characters. I mean, a lot of the Morlocks were collateral damage, but I mean, this was a huge storyline, and it's kind of the last X-Men storyline that I truly loved. And so I had a piece, a Rick Leonardi piece from one of the earlier issues a long time ago, and I don't know, for some reason I parted with it, which was a mistake. But at some point I really wanted to get like something very representative from this storyline. And when I believe 213 was more or less complete and broken up. I mean, some of the pages had already sold, but these pages, the 2-page fight sequence with kind of that last panel of the second page, pretty much being the cover scene of X-Men 213. I was like, wow. I mean, I need to have this, and it would be great to have both. And so I was very, thrilled to get it. I mean, it's so memorable, the storyline, and like I said, it kind of marked that the start of when I started to downshift my collecting and reading as I got more involved in high school sports and applying to colleges and stuff like that. So just key awesome art, and kind of hits the right notes on that level, and also just kind of where I was at that point in my life. So very, very happy to have those two.
Did you get both of those pages at the same time?
I did, yeah.
Okay. Well, that made it easy.
Don't quote me. I have it written down somewhere. I think I got them from Alan Bush. I think he had all of the pages and was kind of selling them out, but I don't quote me on that though. Yeah.
Well, at least you didn't have to like fucking get one and then stumble upon the other one. No.
Yeah. I actually do have them here. So.
Oh man. Gosh, those are beautiful.
Yeah.
God, it's just seeing them together now. It just really, emphasizes the layout being, identical. I mean, I was looking at them and saw that, but then just holding them up like that. Wow. It's just, no, that's a great pair of pages from a really important issue. I mean, I love that book as well.
Yeah. Hey, Nick Baricci. Yeah. John Romita Jr. X-Men rocks. I'm with you, man. I'm with you, pal.
See, I don't like Romita Jr. as much as a lot of other people. I wish I did, because he came in. Well, I mean, I don't know. After Paul Smith, I had a hard time adjusting. And
well, I tell you, as a kid, I had a hard time adjusting too. I mean, I kind of liked the first few issues. I mean, I have the X-Men 176 cover with that amazing Cyclops cover. And then, 177 was inked by Romita Sr., which is a really nice looking issue. And then 178 had that, the Battle Royale with the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. So, I mean, so it got off to a strong start, and then it kind of started to wane. And at some point I got so annoyed that I actually wrote a letter to Marvel saying, this I'm sorry, this John Romita Jr. guy just isn't working out.
It didn't make it into the comic though, did it? But you wrote
it never got printed. But I have to say, through the lens of nostalgia, at this point, I love it again. So sorry, John Romita Jr. I mean, sorry for writing that letter, but I do appreciate it very much now.
Yeah, I started college in '87. And I don't quite recall when John Romita came on. So it happened at kind of the right point in time for me, because I stopped buying comics as much as I had been, in high school and maybe my first year of college. So I kind of got turned off a little bit by the stories and the art, and then so I kind of missed all that. And kind of for me, I didn't start collecting it again until about 96, 97. So I missed Age of Apocalypse and all the early 90s hullabaloo with different, all the chromium covers and all that crazy stuff. So yeah, I kind of regret that, because even going Jim Lee, I mean, I missed I missed like prime Jim Lee periods and everything too. So I had to go back and relearn all that. Which was why it was kind of hard. It's hard for me to put those artists during that time period, Silvestri and Portasio, in my like top list, because it's in a period where I wasn't reading them off the newsstand, and that really played a big factor in whom I felt were the most influential X-Men artists.
Yeah, I will just say just one quick point, that when I say that the Mutant Massacre was kind of the last great X-Men storyline for me, that's not to say that I haven't enjoyed other storylines since then. I mean, obviously I loved X-Men 268, and also the 258 with the whole Psylocke Mandarin storyline, Acts of Vengeance. I mean, there were a few Extinction Agenda, some other ones. So I mean, it's not like I didn't enjoy them, but the last X-Men storyline that really made a big impact on me, that was the Mutant Massacre.
Sure. No, I actually really enjoyed going back and rereading those, because that was I missed it, but no, really great stories there. And I agree with Larry too. John Romita Jr. did get a lot of great stories that I'm sure Silvestri or Jim Lee wish they could have been the artists on those stories. So I'm with you. I'm totally with you. But you know how it is, as a young and influential reader and everything, those changes in artists or creative teams really did impact your love for a title. I mean, it could, and X-Men was so near and dear to me that, it made it easy for me to just stop buying them when I started going to college, and I don't even remember where I was at in Boston, but it didn't have a comic shop down the street. So it made it real easy for me just to kind of forget about it for a while.
Yeah.
But let's keep looking at some artwork here. Okay. I don't want to forget that. So Ditko, here we go.
Yeah. I guess I'm kind of one of the bit of a strange duck in that the kind of the Ditko portion of the run, I have traditionally kind of preferred the backstory, the Peter Parker, the J. Jonah Jameson, Aunt May. And of course his romantic relationships, kind of more than the him fighting the villain of the issue. And kind of later on, I would say kind of with Romita, it's kind of becomes more balanced. Like I think I kind of appreciated kind of the way he drew the action scenes, and kind of I mean, once you get further into the Silver Age, I think I get kind of more interested in all aspects of the title. But kind of in those early issues, what would really grab me was the kind of the everyman persona of Peter Parker. And so obviously this is a page from issue 31, which is Peter's first day at Empire State University. This is actually the this issue, of course, features the first appearance of Gwen Stacy and Harry Osborn. This is the third page that Gwen shows up, but it's the first page that she interacts with Peter. Now, Peter in this page is so distracted by his Aunt May, who's in the hospital, that he doesn't realize that Harry and the others are pulling a prank on him in chemistry class, which ultimately causes his beaker or whatever to science experiment to explode on the next page. And then Gwen kind of plays an unwitting part, kind of somewhat reluctantly, she's trying to get to know Peter. But Peter's just so in his own world that he makes just a horrible first impression on her. So I mean, it's a very charming page, some beautiful shots of Gwen by Ditko. And it's just one of my favorite pages from the book. And in fact, when the book was broken up in 2006 at Mastro Auctions, aside from the splash and the first appearance page of Gwen and Harry, page 8, this page actually outsold I think by some margin, all of the other pages, including all of the costume pages. So I don't think I'm totally crazy in being the only one that appreciates kind of these kinds of character pages that are actually very key to the whole mythos, and introducing new characters and dynamics and relationships. So I just love this page so much. I mean, I could have posted the one of the other two pages from the issue that I have, but kind of this is the one that I thought was it would be interesting to highlight.
No, this is a great pick, and I always say that about the X-Men as well. I mean, it's the character drama, the sitting around just chatting in the mansion, were some of the better points of some of the books. I mean, I love I know one of the pages we're going to see from Smith later. Those talking pages are really what made the stories interesting, and it really made you love the characters. It's what to me what separated Marvel from DC in a lot of different ways. But that's what. But that page is wonderful just for that characterization of Peter and and the complementary characters in there. Just it's a fantastic page to have. And as cool as it would be to have Spidey fighting Green Goblin, I mean, I think that's a better page.
Oh, I will say also, this auction kind of annoys. So one of my collecting regrets. I kind of placed in bids. I didn't bid live on this auction. I just placed them beforehand. And unfortunately, I fell asleep. I kind of placed them in just in case I got busy or something, but I fell asleep and I missed out on page 9. So I have pages 8, 10, and 11, and 9 sold pretty cheaply. And I kind of wish that if I'd been awake, I would definitely have won that too. But it's one of the at this point, many regrets that I have from my collecting journey over 20 years.
Oh, I don't blame you. Hey, this next artwork is going to answer a couple questions from the audience because we're actually getting to a Vampirella piece by Jose Gonzalez. So
Yes.
and I know that you have several in your calf collection. So but Jose is just a master. So
He is a master. So yeah, I know people kind of want to learn kind of the backstory of why I collected so much. I mean, I think at one point I had more than 100 pieces of Gonzalez Vampirella art, plus various work by Enrique and San Julian, Esteban Maroto, or Ortiz, and just a lot of the different Warren artists. And the fact is, so my first introduction was Vampirella. I never read the magazine, the Warren magazine, as a kid, but I remember seeing like the Enrique covers. You'd go to like a drugstore and you'd go to the magazine aisle and it would be there, and so I would
be on the top shelf though, as I recall.
They were on the top shelf, but they weren't like wrapped in
no, of course not.
Brown bags.
They were in the aisles. They weren't behind the register, but they were like the comics would be on the first tier, that the kids could reach, and and the, like you said, the Warren magazines, heavy metal, whatnot, they would always be on a higher shelf, just out of my reach.
Exactly. So I remember seeing it back in the day and always being kind of intrigued by it, but I never really got into it. And then when I started when eBay came, I started going back and buying back issues and whatnot. And then when I started collecting art, that's some of the stuff would show up for sale, and I was just kind of blown away by the quality of the art. And at this point in the very early years of my collecting, I was somewhat nostalgia driven, but I was also, I've always been very interested in art, and I was very actively, going to museums at the time. And I eventually would get involved in museums here in New York City, and taking art appreciation classes and stuff like that. So I mean, the art itself just really blew me away. And we were talking earlier about burn X-Men pages being $2,500 or $3,000 at the time. And look, in hindsight is 2020, and the smart thing would have been to buy those burn pages, but I would see these just incredible looking pages by Gonzalez for like $375 or $500. And I was like, wow, I could get a whole stack of these for the price of
a burn page. And at the time, I mean, let's be clear. I mean, there were burn pages were not hard to get. And Watchmen pages
True.
would show up regularly. I mean, so it's like, I think being kind of new to the hobby, it didn't click to me that early that the supply would eventually dry up and prices would really skyrocket on the stuff that people were really interested in. So anyway, I got involved in Warren Vampirella art because I thought it was really beautiful. And so Gonzalez started with issue 12, and then he did drew the strip for many years, and then he left for a bit, and then he came back towards the end of the run for I think about a year. And there, he developed this much more polished style. And I mean, so I think he did some of the best work that he did on the whole series in those last half dozen or 10 issues or whatever that he did in 80, 81, 82. And this page, I mean, look, I have a lot of great Vampirella art in my collection. This is the page that I wanted to highlight because this is a page from issue 112, which is the last Warren issue. And I just think it just shows off kind of his capability so well. I mean, you've got kind of the, he was drawing in almost a photorealistic style, but then he would kind of jarringly start drawing in kind of more of a traditional European romance style, maybe a little slightly cartoony, as you can see, like in the 5th panel. And I mean, it's not, it shouldn't work, but I feel like it really does work. I mean, it's just so visually striking to me. And so that's why I got into the art, and why I've kept, look, I do not have 100 plus pieces anymore, but I still have, probably a few dozen. And that's why I've kept it. I mean, I think it's just beautiful. I just wish that he had done work on more mainstream comics, and because I would have loved to have seen what this kind of style would have looked like in kind of mainstream American comics. I mean, I think it would have been, a total trip. But in the meantime, at least we have these, and they're just beautiful pages.
No, I agree. I mean, that that third panel, all pencil, it's just it's amazing. And you're right, there's a little bit of like the period advertising kind of style to maybe the first couple images there, but I mean, he's just doing so many different things here. It's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
Nope, I've owned a few Vampirella pages in my time. I don't have any right now, but I need to fix that. But same thing. I mean, the quality of the art is just so unique. A lot of that's twice up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and they're just beautiful pages to hold and see. So no, I can understand why you love them.
And I will say that, look, if anyone's interested in this stuff, I mean, so much art has double, tripled, quadruple in the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
This stuff is, I mean, it's up a little bit, but it hasn't really done that. So
no,
grab it while you can.
Yeah, you can still get decent pages for between $600 and $800. I mean, that are out there. So it's not going to break the bank, and you'll be really pleased with the art that you get.
Yeah.
I mean, you really will.
Mm-hmm.
When you can find them. I mean, they are out there, but they're not. At any rate, let's go to the next art. Another change of pace piece.
All right. Yes. Crazy Cat. So this is obviously by George Harriman. Strip ran from the late 1910s, I believe, or actually earlier than that, kind of the mid 1910s all the way up to the early 40s. And this is something that I've always loved strip art. I mean, even before I read comics, I've read obviously the Peanuts in the 70s and Hagar the Horrible. I have a great Hagar piece actually, and I was Hagar for Halloween one year. So I've always loved comic strips. And I was never introduced to Crazy Cat, and until many people know this, but there was a guy on the CGC forum who called himself Crazy Cat, and he loved to troll me. And while that wasn't the most fun experience, the silver lining of it, the upshot, is that I kind of was like, well, what is this Crazy Cat strip? And so I went back and looked at the art and picked up the collected editions and the books, and wow, I mean, it is just genius. I mean, I have to say, this is probably the greatest comic strip that's ever been done. I mean, I think I've read enough to really appreciate it and come to that conclusion. And so when was this? Probably again, 8 to 10, 12 years ago. Call it 8 to 10 years ago. I said, wow, I think I'd really like to own some of this art. And so I ended up buying, a few Sundays. And then I was like, these are great, but I'd really love a color piece. And I do have a couple now. And this particular piece, actually, believe it or not, the first time I saw it was at the museum. I think it was the Metropolitan Museum of Art or the Museum of Modern Art. I think it says it in the
in the description on your gallery.
Description. Let me just fact check that here. This was it. Okay, yeah, this was at the Museum of Modern Art back in 2012. It was exhibited as part of it wasn't a Harriman exhibition. It was called, I forget what the exhibition was called, but it was loaned to the museum by J. Arthur Wood, who I guess owned a 40,000 piece collection of comic strips and cartoon art. And I just saw this. I was like, wow, now this is the type of color Crazy Cat piece that I would love to have. And I believe what happened is that Mr. Wood passed away and the estate let out some of the art. I think Heritage might have gotten most or all of it. And it was basically hit the auction block. And when it did, I was like, well, I have to have this. And so I won it in 2016. And I mean, it's again one of my favorite pieces. I mean, it's got all the characters, and I do kind of prefer the style that he had in the 1920s as opposed to the 30s and towards the latter years of his life. And that this is, I believe, from about 1925. It was dedicated to. I think it's dedicated to one. Henry Raleigh, if I'm sorry, I'm mistaking that with another piece that I've got. But anyway, so I mean, it basically was done in the mid-20s, kind of right in the period that I really like, and it's got all the characters. It's in color, and it's a beautiful, literally museum exhibited quality piece. So, I'm very, very happy to have that.
No, I love Harriman's work too. We did a Harriman focused discussion probably about a year ago with some writers and the artist from Mutz, and it was a really great conversation. Just to talk about him. I had already owned a couple art books by him, but it made me pick up a couple extras as well, because as much as it's such a hard read, when you think about it's not like reading Peanuts or or Calvin and Hobbes at all. You really have to be focused to read through some of those strips, but they are, they're gorgeous. And, the guy was a creative genius.
Yeah.
This approach for the time. I mean, he was off the charts, incredible. So,
yeah.
And again, somebody who I would love to own something from. Probably wouldn't get the color piece, but if I could own a single panel spot illustration by Harriman, I would be thrilled to have something from him in my collection.
Yes, Amazing Spider-Man 98. So again, this is, believe it or not, a nostalgia piece, because I read my introduction to kind of Silver Age Spidey was through Marvel Tales, and I believe it was in around 1986 or thereabouts. They printed the drug issues, Spider-Man 96 to 98. I believe that was Marvel Tales 191, and then 192 was ASM 121 and 122, the death of Gwen Stacy and the Green Goblin. And I mean, this to me, these are my favorite Spidey issues: 96, 98, and 121, 122. Of the of the five, I mean, look, I mean, 121 is probably my favorite, and 122 has my favorite cover. But my second favorite issue all time of Spider-Man is 98. I mean, it's the conclusion of both the anti-drug storyline and the kind of the climactic battle with the Green Goblin, and then the end. I mean, the end, the last page is one of the greatest endings ever to a Marvel comic, and that is when Gwen Stacy, who had kind of left for London to stay with relatives in the aftermath of the death of Captain Stacy, comes back, and Peter, he's having this really hard time. He's just been battling Norman Osborn, and he hears Gwen's voice, and she comes to, and it's really her, and they come and they embrace, and they finally give Peter a happy ending, and it's just a beautiful page and just a beautiful issue. And a lot of people love the 97 cover, which is owned by Eric Roberts, which is also another Green Goblin Spidey cover, but that one's by Romita, and I think maybe it's because it's by Romita that some people like that one better. But the 98 is the one that really does it for me, because I mean, the 97 it's a very good battle cover. But this one, I mean, look at it. I mean, Spider-Man, what's happening? He's literally digging his hands into the side of the building. He's lost his grip. I mean, just big figures. I mean, look at this perspective that Kane and Gia, has laid out. Ably inked by Gia Koya. The goblins taunting him. I mean, this cover just does. It just hits every button, and the issue, like I said, it's the second favorite issue all time of the title. It just really hits me. And look, it came up for auction, I believe, in 2015, and it sold for almost 180,000 at Heritage. I was the underbidder then, and once I lost that, I never thought that I would get a chance to own this one. But kind of a very fortuitous series of events happened. I believe it was 2 years later at San Diego Comic-Con. So the person who had bought it was my friend Joe Lee, and he had been looking to. I knew that I had heard that he had been looking to sell it, but I mean, the price was kind of out of my reach. But going back to the Vault of Horror, that deal also brought me the Amazing Spider-Man 83 cover. And at the show, Glenn Brunswick reached out to me and said, "Hey, would you be willing to part with the 83 cover?" And given that it was at that time, I mean, bottom line was I did not want to get rid of it, but I thought about it some more and thought, well, maybe if I could parlay this and some cash into getting that 98 cover. So it all kind of came full circle. The 83 cover went back to Glenn, who traded it and got something else in return. And then I took the cash from the sale of this cover and kind of rolled it into this with, obviously with some additional cash, and, voila. I mean, all of a sudden I have one of my all-time favorite Spider-Man covers. So it was just kind of everything fell into place. It was one of those great deals. And, look, I'm just super thrilled to have this. One of my favorite Spider-Man covers, favorite Spider-Man stories. I just love this one.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. Even the colored, version of the cover is phenomenal. I mean, it was such a striking image. I love this period in Marvel Comics covers as well. Just for they were colored in such a special way. But I mean, you're right. You've got an incredibly dynamic drawing here. It's like right out of I like Gil Kane's work a lot as well. I mean, this is like right out of a Bern Hogarth dynamic figure drawing book. It's like everything about the way the figure is drawn is just amazing. And yeah, this is a classic Spidey cover, and from a really important series of books, of course. Those the drug issues. So Scott Wingo's hoping he can see it live. I don't know if that's possible or not, but here
I have it here. So
you do have it. All right, so we'll go full screen.
So hopefully there's not too much glare.
So yeah.
Wow. Maybe turn it just a little bit. Oh yeah, that's just an incredible cover.
Yeah.
Gosh. Well, Gene, that's what I'm saying, man. Your gallery is just like a museum. Comic card fans,
Thank
it
you.
really
Thank you, Bill.
is. Wow. Well, I don't know. Can we top that cover? I'm not sure, but we'll try. We've got a few other pieces to look
Okay.
at here.
Yes.
So for this one, it's like well, I love the fact that it's got MODOK on it. We make lots of jokes. We make lots of jokes about Albert, and we made Albert into Moidoc. And
I need to get that trading card. I need to
yes,
get it signed by Albert.
I will work that out. We're actually printing out the new series right now, and I've got 2 different versions of Albert as Moidoc in those trading cards. And Marcus has got him to agree that he will sign them if anybody gets a card. He will sign them at a show.
Okay.
Reluctantly, probably, but at any rate. Yeah, I'm sure when you look at Jack Kirby, it's like there's so many books that you could get and characters that you could have him a piece from published wise, but getting a piece of Captain America art from Tales of Suspense is really really special, and this is just a fantastic page top to bottom. Every panel is great.
Yeah, I'm kind of embarrassed to say this is my last Kirby page. I mean, I did at one point own a pretty decent amount of Jack Kirby pages, and I certainly regret letting some of those go. This one I could not ever let go. I mean, it is kind of everything that I wanted. You got the flying shield, you got the crackle, you've got MODOK. I mean, the third panel was used on a t-shirt recently. And it is just so striking. The like panel 1, like my friend Glenn Gold has kind of mentioned this. Like he has a Kirby Cap cover where the anatomy is all wrong, but it totally works. And I feel the same about this page. I mean, look at that first panel. Like Cap's arm and hands, I mean, it's just way too big. I mean, it shouldn't look like that. I mean, I'm sorry if I've hopefully that doesn't ruin it for anyone. It doesn't for me, because just the way he's drawn it, it just works. And this is very capably inked by my favorite Kirby inker, Joe Sinnott. I mean, look, I like Sid Shores a lot too, and Giacoya, but Sinnott, obviously very very well weighted lines, very precise. I was actually just telling the owner of the Avengers 5 page that I sold a few years ago that I regret selling that one. And I wish that I had that back. But I'll tell you the reason why is that Avengers 5 page is very historic. But that's got it's not got a flying shield, but I think there's like a rolling shield scene in it, or the shield's kind of coming back a little bit. And you look at the Rhineman inks, and then you look at what Sinnott did on this page, like especially with that shield in the first 2 panels, and just how beautifully crisp and precise that is. I mean, it's just another league. I mean, I just think that it's this page is just a tour de force. I just love it. I have a very good friend who owns a 4-panel page from this issue, and he'll say that that's the best page in the book. And look, I mean, it's a fantastic page. I personally, just with all what's going on here with the MODOK and just kind of all the elements, the Kirby elements, the classic Kirby elements on the page, I just like this one even more. And my favorite page from the book, my favorite Kirby piece that I've ever owned. And so I just wanted to highlight that.
No, this is if this was the only Kirby I ever would own, I would be thrilled to own it, because it does. It's got everything in it that you could ever want. And it's funny, while you're talking, I just keep looking at the anatomy, and I'm like, gosh, it is all wrong. But and I've always felt that way. That's why when I was young, I had a hard time really getting Kirby. And I figure I'm buying my first comics in the late 70s off the rack, and I'm like, why is this old guy still getting to draw all these comics? He's not drawing like John Byrne,
Right.
He's no Bernie Wrightson, he's no Jim Starlin, and I really felt that way. I mean, I don't even know when because you figure, so then throughout the 80s I really didn't pick up anything by him, but I mean, I kick myself in the pants, every time I think about it today. But I remember that. That's all I could think of was like, I don't understand it. But I see this today, and it's, it's just it's amazing. I mean, you look at Cap's leg in that third panel. The muscles don't work like look like that.
Right.
And what's amazing is, you figured Sinnott had to go in there and ink it, knowing it's not right. But then they do it, and it's just art. And it's just such an amazing piece of art.
Yeah.
So no, that's
Marvel magic.
Yeah, that's a fabulous piece stone. I mean, top to bottom, everything about it is just I'm envious. But I saw somebody mention I need to make a Moidoc t-shirt. I think that was the comment. I think I might do that. That'd be a nice surprise for Albert, wouldn't it? To have like Albert with a got art thing. I think I might work something like that out and give it to some people to wear to San Diego or something. That would surprise him. Because remember, he always used to have his own special shirts he'd give everybody who was in the booth, right? He had a got art for a while. I forget his other one. So yeah, I think we can. I think I owe it to Albert to do something special for him.
Okay.
All right. Let's see. So we are going alphabetically here. So we are going to this great Daredevil 208 cover.
Yeah. Daredevil 208 is the first Daredevil cover by David Mazzucchelli. So I started collecting Daredevil with issue 206, the Micah Sin storyline, and for some reason the first 3 issues of Daredevil I collected in 1984 I didn't get at the comic shop. I distinctly recall the weeks that they would come out, I ended up going to the local gas station back when gas stations carried comics. I would ride my bike and pick these up. And so that's what happened, when the July cover dated issues came out, I picked up this issue of Daredevil off the actual newsstand, put it in my backpack and rode my bike home. And when I read it, this story, oh man, this story, next to like XMen 172 may have been the most influential story comic that I read like in the 80s, because like I said, when I got XMen 172, I did my own comic, kind of ripped it off. Well, I'll tell you what, every time I try to write a superhero story, superhero comic or whatever, it always ends up being some version of Daredevil 208. I mean, so Daredevil, I mean, there's like what turns out to be like a robot little girl who lures him into this mansion, which turns out to be a house of horrors, trap set by, I believe it's the mother of the Deathstalker who dies in, I think it was Daredevil 158. And, so he's just, totally, trying to get past all these traps designed to kill him, and he escapes at the end. And then kind of issue 209 kind of continues on from that, where there's all these robots, little girls that are after him, and they're actually bombs now. And it gets kind of crazy then. But 208, I mean, I just loved that story. Next to Daredevil 181 and 227, this is my third favorite issue of Daredevil of all time. So this is a piece that, again, in this hot market, it's kind of hard to explain for people to imagine that people didn't just jump all over this stuff back in the day, but this passed through at least a couple of other hands, and for some reason, I just didn't go for it when it was available, and I ended up finally trading it out of the last owner for what at the time I believed. At the time I thought I got totally ripped off, which I was perfectly willing to do, because look, I mean, this is a hobby. One piece of advice I have for anyone who's looking to build a really good collection is, look, you can't just pay comps. You have to pay over the odds, because no one will let go any of the really good stuff for a good price, a reasonable price. I mean, I'm not gonna name names, but like I remember one guy contacted me about my X-Men 109 page last year and was like, look, I'll let you set the price. I'm sure it'll be, whatever you said, it'll be reasonable. And I'm thinking to myself, first thing I'm thinking is, No, it is not going to be reasonable because there's no way I want to sell it. So no, you've got to pay over the odds. And I thought I did, but given kind of what covers have done and everything since I've gotten this, maybe I think it's more of a fair trade than it was at the time. But anyway, one of the most memorable books from my youth, from my first year of collecting comics, and was so thrilled to get this one and so happy to have it. And I think I actually have it with me here. I do. So I can.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is so clean. That is great.
Yeah.
Wow. See, it's like home run after home run after home run. Yeah, here was a question from Stanley I saw earlier, so
Okay.
worth asking. You know, do you consider investment potential when you're buying art? I mean, it seems more you're constantly typically going after pieces that are of nostalgic side of your collecting. But
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, I think I could answer that one for Gene. We all have to consider the investment potential. Some of the art, at least in today's market, it always has to be in the back of our mind. I mean, you can't make it. None of us are going to make a thrill bid on a nostalgic piece. I mean, we're going to weigh the pros and cons of getting it. I mean, if it's really your grail, I mean, if we can use that term here, sometimes all thought goes out the window. But I have to think most people, and I'm speaking for you now, Gene, but I think most of us have to consider those things today when we're buying a piece of art. Is it you can love it to death, but maybe you can't afford it. So sometimes when you go after it, investment always has to be a factor in at some level.
Yeah. I look in the first 7 years, let's say, of collecting. My budget was at the time was smaller than it would have become, and prices were lower, and I was just kind of didn't have a lot of focus. I was just buying kind of what I liked, because I at that point I definitely took no account of investment consideration. But like you said, as prices have gotten to where they are, it's unavoidable. You have to consider that. I mean, look, I mean, there are still times I will pay over the odds. And look, I mean, if it's something that I really, really want, I will consider the investment potential and then reject it, knowing that I'll probably be buried with the piece.
You just said that with the Daredevil cover, right? You had to go above and beyond.
Yeah.
I got hosed, but I got what I wanted.
Yeah.
And I mean, now you're a really happy man because it's appreciated and all those things. And you don't feel so bad anymore. But yeah, I think. But that's I think you'd be a fool. Any collector would be a fool out there today if they weren't at least thinking about how much they're going to have into this, how long they may have to hold on to it to get that money back. I mean, I always tell people, don't be the first person to buy that art from the artist. In many cases, you won't. If you need to sell it 2 months from now, you're probably not going to get what you bought it for. You're always better off being the second buyer of most new artworks, right? But it's just how things are today.
Yeah.
All right.
So what's up next?
Let's see here. See, I'm losing track. Oh, here we are. All right.
Yes. So I mentioned we were going to get back to Chris Kyra. So I wouldn't say the purchase of the X-Men 109 burn page opened the floodgates, but like I said, he had a lot of cash going out at the time building that house. So very fortuitously, I don't know if I think I probably approached him about this, and luckily we were able to come to a deal for this. Obviously this is a great Bullseye Daredevil fight page from Daredevil 181, potentially the best Daredevil issue of all time. And again, if you've not been in the hobby for the past like 15 plus years, you may not realize it. Look, I mean, first of all, look at this page now from a modern lens. I mean, this is Frank Miller, Daredevil, his best issue, Bullseye, Daredevil. It's been, part of a classic story. This top panel's image has been kind of reproduced like in various formats.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, like how you think, like, why would anybody not want to pay like stupid money for this at all times? Well, that was not always the case. This is a page that, like the X-Men 100 that I told you about earlier, it traded hands so many times that people just got sick of it. It really, I mean, it finally landed with Chris, who had held on to it. But prior to that, it was just kind of moving around. And as much as I love the page, I think, I don't know, maybe subconsciously I thought that it would be available. It would always be available, or, I just wanted something else a little more at the time. But again, when I started really focusing on things that really matter to me, like around 2011, 12, 13, I said, oh my God, like, how on earth did I let this slip by my hand so many times? And once I knew that kind of Chris might be amenable to be doing some deals, thankfully he was willing to let this one go. And now it's again a favorite in my collection.
No, I don't blame you. I always wanted a Frank Miller Daredevil page, and 181 would be, definitely one of the few books from his run that I would love to have a page from. So, this is just amazing page. The story was just phenomenal, and I love, I've reread this page a couple times while I was putting the thumbnail together because it's just so great. Bullseye, he's like, Murdoch's not Daredevil. I mean, just everything. It was such a great story. I mean, man. I mean, Miller was, top of his form here doing this. And the funny thing, as much as I love those books back then, I wasn't thinking like that, like it was going to be so amazing. I mean, I was enthralled. The storyline was just amazing, but it's even better than it was when I was reading it. And I thought it was great then. So yeah, no, this is just an absolutely great Grail page. If I had, for me, a Miller Daredevil page for me at 181 would be all I would require.
Yeah. And here it is.
Let's see. Here we go. Man, look at that.
Yeah.
That is beautiful. And I think there were a couple questions that popped in here. Let's see, what was it? I mean, Knights of Old wanted to know what have you given up to be a player in the hobby? Have you given up anything? You've just been fortunate to always been able to build upon your collection, right? I mean, it's an odd question, but I'm sure you haven't given up beach houses. So
I don't have a beach house, but I don't know. Look, I probably could have bought more real estate, but for many, many years, I mean, I was I grew up in a very traditionally conservative household. So even like at the peak of my career, and this was a huge mistake in hindsight, but again, it's hindsight. I was spending so little on this stuff back when I should have been spending a lot more, and then probably spent too much kind of later on when I was less, less able to do so. But it's kind of all worked out. Sure. Yeah, I mean, look, given what it's worth, I mean, not only just what I potentially have given up on the way, but I actually had this conversation with another big collector today. He's actually a couple of other big collectors. There's at this point, a lot of people are sitting on collections that are quite valuable. I mean, life changing even. And the question is, look, for me, I'll be honest. I told my buddy, look, I got rid of a fair bit of my collection, kind of the low hanging fruit in 2018 to 2020. I bought a second apartment that I combined with the first, and so I kind of needed the cash at the time. But right now, I mean, the stuff that remains is stuff, with very few exceptions, it's stuff that I really, really love. And my friend was saying, look, I mean, prices are so high, and this might be the opportune time, if not now, then kind of sooner than when he was thinking, to kind of cash out. And I told him, look, it may be the right time for you. I just don't think that I could do it. I just personally love this stuff too much. I'm perfectly willing to not have a beach house at this time to be able to hang on to the art and
sure.
And whatnot. And it's not like there's not money to go around for other things. I mean, I have a very thriving sports card trading card collection among other things, and so I don't feel like I've had to been in a fortunate position where I've not had to sacrifice that much to participate. But right now, like another thing I've been saying a lot these days is that holding on to what you've got is the new buying. because I mean, the price of admission is so steep. I don't know. I mean, especially when you've been in the hobby as long as we have, and you look at some of these prices, just there's a mental block there.
Right,
In many
right. No,
cases.
I completely agree. I mean,
Yeah.
we were all struggling with just trying to understand where we're at, as a hobby and the price points where things are. But it makes it a little bit interesting and a little more difficult, I think, for new collectors to come in here when they're seeing prices like that. But that's why we kind of need to strive to let people know that there still is affordable art out there, like you were talking about the Warren art earlier. That there is a lot of great things that people can own, and they don't have to be a player at the John Byrne, Frank Miller, Daredevil pages, as a starting point, that they can start out small and work their way up. And before we look at the next art, Mickey had made a post kind of to what we were talking about with the prior piece of art and the investment concept, where he says, most of my high-end pieces I bought recently, and I did not consider the investment potential since I never intend to sell. I think that's that's completely valid, right? If you know going into it that it's a keeper and it's going to be in your personal collection forever, then price really doesn't matter. I would agree with that.
Yeah, good point. Good point. I mean, I look, I started to take into telling people, some of the people who've inquired about some of these people, some of these pieces, potentially many of these pieces that I have, will literally never be sold unless circumstances, change unexpectedly. I mean, I recently redid my estate planning. I literally got stuff going to my kids, my wife, and stuff like that. So I'm hoping, right now my kids, they love this stuff. I'm hoping that they will be part of the next generation or a future generation of collectors and aficionados. So we'll see how that goes. But as of now, I am hopeful that much of this stuff I will not need to sell this stuff, and that it will be able to be passed on. But obviously it's a long ways away, hopefully, so we'll see. But that is my intention.
No, I've been recently considering the estate planning side of things as well. I mean, you kind of have to at this
You kind of have to, yeah.
regardless of the
highly
size of your
recommend
collection.
it
It's something
to
that you
everyone.
have to really consider. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, now this next piece is definitely one that from a series that I've never read. So
I know it's coming. Okay, this is Adolescent Radioactive Black Belt Hamsters #2 by Parsonovich, or Chris Parsons, goes by various names. Parsonovich, I think, is what he's credited as. I got this piece from the other Bill C. I saw him post in the comments. I'm not sure if he's still around there, but thank you, Bill. So this, I want to say this series came out maybe around 1986 or thereabouts. Obviously the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles started the funny anthropomorphic animal comic craze. And I did enjoy the Turtles. I didn't read every issue, but I picked up a number of the early issues and enjoyed that series. And they were coming out with all kinds of parodies and ripoffs, parodies of parodies, and most of them were just not all that good. But this series cracked me up like no other comic did. Maybe Gru the Wanderer, but back in the 80s, I mean, this comic just it really got me with the humor. It was written by, I think, Don Chin, and then illustrated by Parsonovich. I mean, these hamsters get these powers, and they become named. They're all named after various action heroes: Bruce Lee, Chuck Norris, etc. And they go off on these crazy adventures, and it's just a really funny book. And I really enjoyed this just crazy art style that Parsonovich had. Reminds me very, very much of like underground art.
right. I mean,
And
I'd say it's like Crumb on steroids, right? I
yeah,
mean, where
yeah.
Crumb he's looking to take a few shortcuts here or there, and his artwork was perfect. You look at this one, it's just like it's just Crumb times 2,
Yeah.
or 3 or 4 or 5. I mean, the detail in this piece is just crazy.
It's crazy. And so, yeah, I mean, I always wondered what the heck happened to this stuff. And, I would always be looking for, I mean, I loved a lot of independent titles from the 80s, and this one was one of my favorites. I kept looking for covers, but the only things available in the marketplace were, were by Sam Keith, who's obviously a fine artist, but, very different style. It just not what I remembered from the series. So finally I reached out to the writer. I emailed him, tracked him down. He's now a real estate agent out in California, and he gave me some leads, and I pursued them, but nothing panned out. But the one guy who was more persistent was the other Bill C, and he reached out and somehow got in touch with Parsanovich and ended up getting a couple of covers, including this one. And it turns out the whole complete one cover and issue were promised to a friend, so I guess that one was kind of off the market. But very thankful to Bill. I think I kind of kept in touch with him about maybe letting one of the covers go, and this is the one that I really wanted because I hadn't actually read the 3D issue cover that he had also gotten. And so I'm glad that we finally at some point came to a deal. And when it came, I mean, I'm actually glad that I have this one. I mean, this cover just it's not the number one, but this cover just works on so many more levels to me. It's got so much more going on. I think if I recall correctly from many years ago at this point, these guys head off to New York for some adventures, and of course, I mean, I've been living here for almost 30 years now, and so yeah, I mean, it's just it just works on every level for me, and yeah, just super nostalgic, super glad to have it. I mean, it's not one of the more expensive pieces of my collection, but I mean, in terms of how much I love it, it's way up there.
Wow. I mean, I feel like I need to go back and read it now because I didn't. I remember seeing it on the shelves, but I was just like, I don't get. It can't be good. It can't be good. But I can be swayed.
It's good. At least the Parsanovich drawn issue. I think it's like the first 5 issues or so are worth checking out.
All right, I will look into it.
Okay.
I made a note of it while it was on the screen. I'm like, all right, I can't forget this now. All right, let's see the next piece, George Perez. Of course, you had a lot of great things to say about George, of course, when we did the little tribute and everything. But this is just a phenomenal, beautiful cover. Just everything that we all love about George Perez's work in this Batman cover. It's just, I mean, so much detail. And you get a city scene. You get a lot of characters. I mean, it's just, oh man, it's gorgeous.
So much going on. Yeah. And I mean, first about George. Yeah. I mean, I've never met him in person, but, I've always loved his art, starting from the Teen Titans on up is when I first discovered it. And, by all accounts, just everyone, obviously I know a lot of people who have met him, just a great guy, and just terrible that, it looks like we may lose him at this, very, relatively young age. So I felt that I was very happy to contribute to the video. Very thankful that you guys put that together. This piece. I mean, like I said, I started admiring George's Titans work from the early '80s, and I think he really hit his stride. Right around Crisis, and then definitely through the late '80s with this, the work he did on Batman. And then I was never really an Infinity Gauntlet guy, but I know a lot of people consider that to kind of still be in the kind of the prime Perez part of the run of his career. And in any case, I mean, I really love '80s Batman, '80s non-Dark Knight Batman. I mean, I love Dark Knight and Killing Joke and Year One and all that stuff too. But I think that there are some very underrated storylines. I mean, I love like 10 Nights of the Beast, and even that serial killer one, that storyline that preceded it. And obviously by the end of the decade, I mean, you had the Death in the Family, and which was followed up at some point, I think in 1989 or thereabouts, by a Lonely Place of Dying. And George did all these covers. I think it crossed over with the Titans and some other titles, and I don't know if they were all just used for the colors. I know there's some portfolio plates based on these covers as well, but anyway, I mean, to me, this is just everything I love about George's art. I mean, just the inking is beautiful. The composition is just amazing, and of course, the signature level of details, even just the level. I mean, you see like the photographs at the bottom, I think it's the Dick Grayson's family and stuff. And I mean, just the amount of, I mean, you look at what other artists are doing at the time, and then you look at this, and just the amount of time George must have put into doing this, just because he cares about his craft that much. He loves it. I mean, this is, I mean, it is just an amazing image. And I mean, obviously this is one that people have reached out to a number of times trying to let it go. And yeah, I think this is one that I will hold forever. I mean, to me, I have another Perez piece, a Titans cover, but this is the one that just I mean, it's just so. I mean, it hurts my eyes to look at it. Not because of the detail or anything. It's just because it's just so bite the back of your hand beautiful. I mean,
it really is
amazing cover. Yeah.
And the coin flip. I mean, he just put so much effort into everything that he touched. And so here, let me get you full screen on that one. Wow, look at that. No, that's just amazing.
Yeah.
Yep. Somebody said they'd pay admission for the Gene Museum whenever you're willing to open the doors.
Keep it in mind.
Well, now we're going to take a look at the piece on your wall that we looked at a little bit earlier.
Yeah, covered in New Mutants 31, Bill Sienkiewicz, of course. Yeah, New Mutants was, I mean, because I was an X-Men fan, I immediately gravitated to the New Mutants and Alpha Flight, anything mutant titles in those early years, included the miniseries, X-Men versus the Micronauts and all those things. And, look, when issue 18 came along, it was, and Sienkiewicz took over the art chores. Yeah, it was a big shock. Jarring. I mean, his style had been getting more and more experimental, expressionistic, and yeah, I mean, it just hit me like a sledgehammer. And a lot of people I know didn't like it. I actually took to it. I thought it was very interesting. I mean, previously to that, you had Bob McLeod and Sal Buscema, Tom Mandrake, who worked on the previous issues, and they all had kind of similar, very clean styles, and it totally worked. And look, if they had stayed with that, I would have been totally happy. But I really like this rabbit hole that Sienkiewicz and Claremont with the story, Crazy Demon Bear storyline and everything. Then Legion, and took us down. And Sienkiewicz, I felt like he got more and more experimental, kind of with each passing month. And then when his last full-fledged cover is 31, and it's the weirdest one of all, and it's huge, and it's just so crazy. I mean, I just love this cover. I mean, a lot of people see it. I mean, I think it's kind of creepy, and they don't really take to it. But this is my favorite. This is not just my favorite Sienkiewicz New Mutants cover. This is my favorite Sienkiewicz cover, period. I mean, look. I mean, we showed it. We showed it again after, hanging on the wall. I mean, it's just got such presence, and just the crazy, the style. It's getting more. I mean, it's not abstract, but it's more expressionistic, and kind of they're all marionettes, and just kind of the medium he uses. I know part of this is paint and collage, and just I mean, it's just got every bit of craziness that I would want in a Sienkiewicz piece from this period. And again, this showed up at Heritage or something a long time ago, back when I was kind of very unfocused and not really focusing on these pieces that really meant the most to me. And finally, again, this wasn't that long ago that I've had it. It's only been a few years, I think. I was like, man, look, I mean, prices are just getting so crazy. Maybe I can trade or do some kind of deal to get this out of the owner. And I decided to let go one of my Burn X-Men pages, which was a very, very, very good page. That I really didn't want to let go, but I just did the calculus in my mind. Look, if I trade this, I've still got the X-Men 109, and then I'll have like literally the my favorite Bill Sienkiewicz piece ever. And so to me, it was worth sacrificing that page plus cash. And I'm so happy to have this in my possession and to be
Yeah.
able to look at it every day, as somebody mentioned earlier.
Right, right. I mentioned that to be able to see, be able to see that every day when you're at your desk would be an incredible opportunity to see that. I remember Bill back at around that time, he was doing a lot of experimental stuff with collage. I mean, not just he was already experimental enough with just his style.
Yeah.
When he really kind of broke from that, kind of a Neil Adams kind of feel to his art to just really his own thing.
Mhm.
But I remember I had picked up even a poster because posters were kind of big during that time period
Right.
of from him, and I know it wasn't used as a cover, but I remember it was all the New Mutants, and Warlock was on there, and he had little bits of like computer chips and things
Oh yeah,
embedded into the
that great
art
piece that David
for
Mandel has put
Warlock, and
up.
to make it even
Yeah.
cooler. And I
Mhm.
mean, I actually think I still have that I should dig around in the closet to find
Okay.
out. But I mean, that's I mean, he was just so cool. I mean,
Yeah.
and like Larry mentioned, it was hard to read for me. I just got it. I mean, I was I wanted to be an illustrator. I knew I was going to art school at this point,
Mhm.
and I was I was in that kind of experimental stage in different art with my art style and too. And when I saw his stuff, I was just like, damn, this guy's got it. When I just knew right away, like this, he was onto something cool. Nobody else is going to get it. But yeah, I mean, and you look at that, you can see the fabric swatch in the lower right. I mean,
Mhm.
that's just so inventive, and I just can't imagine. I mean, he must have been on such a jag, see, on such a high, just rolling through that art, just really just trying all these different things, and it was all working for him. I mean, that's like got to be the sweet spot for a creator, to be doing, exactly what they love and having turn out to be so perfect, and yet so in weird ways controversial probably to a lot of people who looked at it.
Yeah, and I have to say, like, for modern, like, okay, if you weren't around in the 80s and you're used to comics from the last 20-25 years or whatever. Look, I mean, nowadays in comics there's so many different styles and everyone, so many different creator projects and everything. But back in the 80s, it was mostly big two dominated. You had a thriving independent scene, but by and large, most of the art was very, more or less, I mean, it had gotten updated, but it was very in the traditional style. And when Bill Sienkiewicz came along, wow, I mean, his influence, I just think is just, I think most people, a lot of people may not be aware of just how monumental. I mean, he ushered in, I think, a sea change in comic art starting
No, I
kind
would
of
agree.
84, 85.
You think back to those covers too. I mean, they literally, whereas most covers they look like it's just like a printed cover. You looked
Yeah,
at those covers and you thought they had to photograph this cover and
right,
print it from that. It would
right.
be like a Joe Jusko cover or something. But Joe's work, of course, is totally different. But
Mhm.
when you looked at those, I mean, they with a glossy cover, they just stood out as just being so unique from anything else of its time, and that was what made it cool. It was like fine art on a comic book cover, and then you opened up the
Exactly.
book and it was a little different. It wasn't, it wasn't quite like the cover, but it was still just, it just blew your mind that
Yeah.
the things that he was doing. I mean, New
Mhm,
Mutants to
mhm.
me was, I could reread that. I mean, I reread his run on New Mutants so many times just because I love the art. He was breaking so many rules with the way his page designs were. Um, yeah, I mean, that's why I say, because I thought I like to think I'm creative, but you look at something like that, and that guy was just on a high, on such a run, and you don't even know if he was on it. He was just doing his thing, and it was just so right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, and he could draw something as mundane as like that issue when the New Mutants are having a slumber party, and just make it look just so
Right,
incredible.
right, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep, nope, I'm totally with you. And that Ruben said very Bob Peak, circa 60s and 70s. Sure, I could. Bob Peak definitely
Mhm.
was, I'm sure, an influence on Sienkiewicz. I mean, on many illustrators.
Mhm.
All right, well, now we get to the Paul
Ah,
Smith
yes,
artwork.
right, right, right.
This is a recent one for you too, right?
This is a recent posting, but I bought this maybe around 2018, I want to guess. So
Oh,
I've had it for a while, just not posted it. I think the little blurb for this show said, I have about 160 artwork pieces of art in the gallery. I mean, I think my total collection is 450 plus pieces. So a lot of stuff is not on there. A lot of stuff, will eventually get on there, but kind of taking my time with it. Don't want to kind of tip my hand everything I'm interested in.
Well, you know, we did that really fun show with Dino and Nick,
Mhm.
last week where they were showing pieces that they don't show in CAF.
Right, right.
And I don't know. So maybe you could be on the list, Gene, if you ever want to show 10 pieces from your collection that aren't on CAF, just to, and they don't have to be all the A+ pieces,
Yeah.
right? I think
Mhm.
and sometimes it's just nice to see things that we haven't had the opportunity to see in years. So just throwing that out there. If you're ever up for it, I bet you I could pair you up with somebody and we could probably put together a fun show.
I will keep that in mind. I will keep that. I actually considered, my initial plan was to throw in a few, brand new pieces, of which this was going to be one of them, onto this program. But I kind of figured, I mean, there was so many pieces that I'd love to talk about that were already out there that I just decided to go with the kind of the tried and true. But who knows? Maybe in the future we could do something
All right.
with some of the other stuff.
I will be open to that if you ever want to do it.
Okay. So this obviously Paul Smith, X-Men 172. And this okay, so X-Men 172. I mean, to kind of the casual observer, it may not seem like the most interesting issues. I mean, barely anyone is in costume for most of it. There's a lot of talking heads work on it. And but the whole issue is just crafted so well. And I I debated, like, obviously I got to show something from X-Men 172 on this on this broadcast. What page do I want to show? And obviously the cover would have been the obvious choice, and then that page, that great fight page with Wolverine, Nightcrawler, the Silver Samurai that I think Tatiana showed on your X-Men special. That was another choice, but I mean look, that's just a great, interesting fight page. But this page is a lot more subtle, and I thought this was worthy of some conversation. I mean, look at this page. There is, the first three panels have literally no background. There's not a shred of action on this page, but just look at the way the panel layouts. I mean, the kind of the interesting how they offset. It kind of makes your eyes move back and forth. You're following the conversation, and what a conversation! I mean, all credit to Chris Claremont. Colossus asks, can this Shingen person be stopped? And that's obviously Mariko's father, who is the villain in the Wolverine miniseries, who dies at the end, spoiler alert, dies at the end of the Wolverine miniseries. And Wolverine answers, already done, Petey, by me. And then Kitty Pryde asks, great, then we can question him in prison, right? And get all the answers we need. And then Nightcrawler says, yeah, I don't think so. And it pans back to Wolverine, and look at that look on his face. And he just kind of he's kind of letting her down in a way, just realizing that they come from two separate worlds, and his reality is so much harsher than the one that she's known. And Shingen is dead at his hand, and it's just very powerful. It's a talking heads page with no background, but it just works. I mean, it's just beautiful comic storytelling. And then the bottom five panels are no slouch either. I mean, here's Lady Mariko, Mariko kind of agonizing, like, what his father has kind of brought shame to the clan. What should he do? What can she do to atone for his crimes? And it's just a very contemplative moment, but just kind of the five panels. I mean, just the light and the dark, and how she's moving kind of against the screen and kind of in the shadows, and kind of the geometrical shapes in the background. I mean, it's just so well drawn. I mean, this is what we love about Paul Smith. I mean, just kind of the economy of line and the beautiful character, the way he displays the characters. I mean, it's just a fantastic page, even though a lot of people may not traditionally get it right away.
Oh no, it's Paul Smith's artwork spoke to me the moment I saw it, and I don't think I was able to really articulate why I loved his work, when I was reading it off the newsstand. But you're right. I mean, it's just so. I mean, he's just it's a simple, like you said, his line work is so minimal in many ways, but he just catches everything just right. And I mean, and it doesn't, I don't know. I mean, I just love this. I love his page. I love everything about Paul Smith, and I'll always be envious of those of you who've been able to collect artwork from him, because he's always going to be, he'll always be number 3 in my list. But but yeah, no, it's just amazing. I mean, I could go back and read the Paul Smith issues at any point, and I'd still I'd be gushing over the artwork, every time. So
yeah.
Nope. Yep. See, and if it weren't for Gary Land, I would have at least owned 1 or 2 of those pages in the past.
I see there's a question here. What art did you love as a kid that doesn't quite do it for you enough to collect today? Let me think here.
Oh, right. That doesn't hold up to your
Yeah,
standards.
well,
Right. I saw that question.
I don't want to be. Yeah, I mean, there's I would say there's like kind of one thing that comes to mind. So at one point, I was collecting everything and anything that had some kind of nostalgic connection to me, and I loved those Boris Vallejo paperback covers. And it's funny. So I'm in early 80s. I'm a very young kid, and my friend, as a gag gift, gets me the 1984 art book, erotic art book by Boris and Doris, Enchantment, which has very sensual. And so, like when the cover to that book came up for sale, I said, "Oh, nostalgia! I've got to have it." I mean, I know it was kind of bought as a joke, but I've got to have it. I ended up buying up a lot of Boris. I no longer own any, and it's not that I don't still appreciate and still enjoy quite a bit of his work, but that's one thing that I really loved as a kid. But I feel like maybe I don't really need to own these days.
Sure.
And just
Boris
here
is
is
a nice
that,
guy too. But I get you. Here, let me. Here we go.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, he drew a really great Wolverine. I mean, he just.
Oh yeah.
And Brood.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, all right. All right, let's look at. So that was our. We were going to cap it at 16. You gave me 5 other pieces. Maybe we can show those as well before we end tonight's chat. This is, Gene, this has been great. We've had we peaked over 100 people watching live, and we still have 80 people watching live. So everybody's enjoying the conversation.
Having a lot of fun. So yeah, this has been great.
As am I.
Yeah. Okay. I'll just kind of quickly run through the last ones. This is Tony Millionaire. This is the album cover to Elvis Costello's National Ransom. Came out, I think, around 2010. And to me, this is just it captured the zeitgeist perfectly of the time. I mean, just the Fed at that point was, running the printing presses. We had all the fracking and, all the oil, the corporatism, all that stuff. And look, I mean, it really, you could make the say that it is very applicable today. Just kind of an indictment of kind of the greed and kind of the things that are going on in society and politics and business today. So I just love this, and I reached out to Tony Millionaire himself when I first saw this when Elvis Costello performed live on one of the late shows. And I looked at the album cover and I was like, oh my God, I mean, this is amazing. And I tracked it down and made him an offer, and it was kind of worked. And just love having this one.
No, this is great. There's definitely not a lot of Tony's artwork on CAF, but yeah, this is a beautiful example. I mean, it really, it's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. And as Kavi and George mentioned, they're both big music fans. We certainly don't have a lot of music related art on CAF either. So
right.
So this is really nice to see. It really is. Oh yeah, and then there you go. Even Ruben says loves music art. Exactly. Yeah, there's just not a lot on CAF, unfortunately. But and thank you, Ron, for the super chat. I appreciate it, and it's because Gene's a great storyteller. We need to have him back. Marcus mentions Drinky Crow, but yeah,
Oh
Tony.
yeah, right.
Yeah, Tony. He really is a talent, though. I mean, that's just an absolutely beautiful piece.
Thanks.
And you mentioned Bob McLeod earlier.
Yeah.
So I can let me show this one here.
Obviously, New Mutants #1. This is one of the first back issues that I gotten, because I started collecting, as I said, in late '83. This had come out slightly earlier, but it was still affordable. And yeah, look, I mean, being a young kid at the time, the characters were very relatable. The Bob McLeod art, very easy on the eyes. And so, yeah, I just love the book, all the way through, the Cabbage run and beyond. But this, I later went on to read the graphic novel where they first appear, but this was my introduction to the series. And yeah, I just loved it. It's one of my most nostalgic, books from the from that era. And I had been looking for this because it hadn't turned up. And I remember I forget what year that I got it, but like the few months earlier at the New York Comic Con, I asked Bob McLeod, "Hey, do you happen to know where this is?" And he did not. And hold on, I just want to just take a second here.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I messed up that slide. I saw I kind of messed up the layering on it, so I wanted to show the scan you had sent versus the terrible slide job I did there.
Yeah, okay. So I got this in 2015, I guess, and so the it was I probably talked to Bob at the 2015 New York Comic Con. He didn't know where it was, and then I was literally just killing the last 45 minutes or so for a trip to the UK to visit the in-laws, and just sitting around hanging out on the CGC boards, and suddenly I see a guy selling this cover and the Fury of Firestorm one cover, and boy, I was like, oh my god, I'm about to go to the airport. I've been looking for this for years. I must have, I mean, I just, no hesitation, I'll take it, but I'm leaving. I need to get this check into a mailbox by, in the next half hour or whatever. And so I rushed. We did the deal. Thankfully, he was there, and we quickly communicated, got all his info, sent the check, and yeah, that's the story. So super thrilled about that one. And this one, just so you know, I mean, the Professor X image is on a different board. I had an overlay made to put that on the main board. And big bonus is that the original corner box art is actually on the cover, so it's not it was not done separately.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, you lucked out on that one. If you would have been on the plane, you would have been really regretting that trip.
It was meant to be.
Definitely. And Ruben's asking that, yeah, they sold, the original owner sold both covers at once, or at least offered them both at the same time.
Yeah. I didn't pick up the Firestorm. A friend of mine picked it up at that time, who has since sold it.
Sorry, I'm just reading through the chat, make sure I didn't miss anything there. But all right, well, let me hide this one.
Okay.
And let's see, we got 3 more pieces to look at, and we're going back to the X-Men again.
Yep.
So well, this is a good one.
December 1983 cover date, first month that I actually started buying comics off the rack. And this was the very, very first comic that I bought myself. Previous to that, I had been borrowing comics to read from friends. And then kind of the first comic I didn't mention, the first comic that I ever read was Man-Thing Volume 2, number 6, that my parents bought for me to keep me busy on a road trip. They bought me that, and they bought She-Hulk #1 for my sister. Neither of those books really made much of an impression on me, believe it or not, and it took until '83 for me to get really involved in it. But anyway, this was the first one that I bought, and I just think it's a fabulous cover. This came out. Look, I don't know if it was in the same collection as the New Mutants one cover, but it also came from a Florida collection earlier, I believe, and it made it to Heritage, and it was one that I busted the bank at the time versus where the market was to get. And so yeah, I've got that. I've got the X-Men 172. I've got the Marvel Feature Volume 2, number 1. I've even got the Man Thing Volume 2, number 6 covers. So somehow over the years, I have managed to get, like four, plus the Red Sonja Volume 3, number 3 covers. I mean, like 5 of the very first comics that I've ever read covers to them. So consider myself to be extremely fortunate.
Indeed you are. Jason, who I know loves John Romita Jr. X-Men art.
Come on, Jason.
He's trying to temper everybody's expectations so he can get a few choice pieces at maybe a little bit of a discount. Doesn't work all the time. Doesn't that work? Let's see, 2 more pieces, and they are both doozies. This is
okay.
This is, we talked about this piece earlier too.
Yep. So this again, this is the first Sonja in her own title, Marvel Feature Volume 2, number 1. This is literally in the first stack of comics that I read along with X-Men 172 back in the fall of '83. So super. I mean, that really doesn't get much more nostalgic to me than this. I was looking for this one for many, many years, and it never turned up. And it finally showed up at auction at Heritage. Curiously, not that long after I made a impassioned plea on the on a podcast, Felix Comic Art podcast, asking, hey, if anybody knows where this is, I would really love to get this. Nobody reached out to me directly, but it did show up to auction only a matter of months later. So maybe or maybe not, it had something to do with it. And again, this is one I had to pay over the odds at the time, but given what it means to me, it was worth it. It's Gil Kane pencils, John Romita Sr. inks, just super, super nostalgic and a great cover to boot.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I mean, Gil Kane, he either love him or hate him, but I think most people are in the love category. But this is just a beautiful, beautiful drawing, and you know a Gil Kane piece when you see it.
Yeah,
and yeah, this is great, and wonderful that you were able to pick it up too. I mean, it seems like you've been really fortunate to get these pieces that have a lot of significance to you.
Yes, yes.
And your time
and I kind of feel bad for people who are coming in nowadays, because a lot of the pieces that they may really enjoy are already in very strong hands. I mean, I'm fortunate to have started in the hobby in 2002, but a lot of people got in the 90s, and so a lot of pieces that I would have loved to have owned were never available to me, like Secret War, like Daredevil 181, and a lot of the the burn X-Men stuff and things like that. So yeah, but overall I'm happy.
Well, after we look at this last piece, maybe you should throw out a few pieces that you're hoping to get, and the fates will be in your favor, and they'll end up either on Heritage or somebody will contact you.
Gotcha.
But now, so this is a little different. This is we'll take a look at this.
I don't remember what this piece. Oh yes, right. Yeah. So back in the 80s, the only I was very much a Marvel guy. I did enjoy a fair number of independents, First Comics, some Eclipse titles, etc. But I didn't really do a lot with DC. Just really Teen Titans. And I dropped that at some point. Batman, which was kind of kind of on and off. But the one thing that I did stick with for quite a bit was Swamp Thing, because the Alan Moore run was just so good. And the first issue that I picked up and eventually went back and bought from issue 20 all through the to the end of the run was issue 48, which had this terrifying cover by John Tuttleben of this backward headed crazy monster called the Invunch, and that always stuck to me. So I always wanted to get a cover. I would have loved to have gotten that cover, but I've never seen it. And yeah, I eventually did pick up a couple of pages from this run instead. And when I saw this page, the Steve Donnelly had it, and I was like, oh my God. I mean, you've kind of got the cover scene in that half splash part in the bottom, and that wonderfully detailed headshot of Swampy, in the third panel is just like the cover of issue, I think 47 or 49, one of the other ones right around there. So it's almost like getting two covers on one page. And so obviously the trick was like, well, how much is this going to cost me? And so, I mean, I inquired, as they say, and it actually wasn't bad at all. And I was kind of amazed. And so I didn't want him to think that he had priced it too cheaply. So, I did try to negotiate a little bit, and I think he did come down a little bit. And so I was super thrilled to get it for what I did. And just love John Totlebin's art, both on Swamp Thing and on Miracle Man, and this particular page with kind of the two cover-ish images, and especially being the first issue from the run that I read, yeah, it kind of hits all the buttons. So very, very pleased to have gotten this.
Yeah, I love the that close-up images of Swamp Thing there in the middle at the top. It's so haunting and human and grotesque at the same time. Yeah. I mean, Totleben was he was just a master. He was a perfect choice to be an artist on this book. And I guess I'd kind of agree with where Ruben said he kind of likes Totleben over even Wrights in drawing Swamp Thing, but it's just different, But but I love the way he approached the character as far as his illustration style was just so perfect for this.
Yeah.
And again, it's like every nostalgic piece that you have a hankering for, you've managed to get. But like I said, so what? Maybe without saying pages, I mean, what books and artists?
Sure. Okay. So first of all, obviously, anything from XMen 172, please come to me first. There are a lot of pages from 173 that also interest me. I actually have a fair number from that book, but I know that I'll never complete that one. So it's not that I have to go for every page, but especially anything like that Wolverine Silver Samurai fight sequence, I would love to get. Other than that, kind of the things that are specifically nostalgic to me, as I mentioned, that Thor 339, Walter Simonson, if you ever want to get rid of that, if you're ever willing to let that go, I'm your man. But barring that, like when I made that kind of shout out for, if anyone knew where that Red Sonja cover was, the other one that I've been looking for well over a decade is the cover to Defenders 125. Which again, I believe is a December 1983 cover dated book. It's the first new Defenders, which doesn't really mean a lot, but my local comic shop owner just hyped it up, saying this is going to be the next X-Men 94. And look, and being a young kid, I just ate that all up, and I was like, and plus the art is beautiful. I mean, it's the layouts by Carl Potts, finished and painted by Bill Sienkiewicz. So it looks like a Bill Sienkiewicz cover, but it's actually Carl Potts doing the pencils. And I reached out to Carl. He didn't know where it was. I think somebody reached out to Bill on my behalf, and I don't think he knew what happened to it. I've never seen or heard word of it, but among specific things that I would love and that are still potentially attainable, that's probably near the top of the list, especially since things like G.I. Joe 21 have surfaced and flown the coop now at absurd prices. So I mean, so Defenders 125 is one that I would dearly love to have. Also Red Sonja Volume 3 number 1 by Mary Wilshire and also by Walter Simonson. I think he did the inks. That one, very nostalgic. So I would say those two. If anyone has any information on those, I would love to hear about it.
That's right. And if you do hear about it, Gene's calf gallery is linked in the description of the show. So you can always reach out and contact him through his calf gallery if you stumble upon any of these artworks.
Yes. And I'll also I see on this main screen, my Instagram account is collections_GP. I try to make usually one post every day. That'll be trading cards, role-playing games, comic books, comic art, illustration art, pretty much anything that I've accumulated over the last, God, unfortunately, it's been, over 4 decades of collecting various things. So if you're interested in any of those categories, please check that out and feel free to reach out there as well.
All right. Yeah. Knights of Old, I think, has asked this question 3 times. Any vintage original baseball card art? There's not a lot on calf. I know that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I look, I've seen some of the originals turn up at auction. I don't own any of it though.
Yeah. But it's probably out there somewhere. At least, hopefully, it didn't end up in the trash.
Right.
So, Gene, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I've really enjoyed it, and it's
likewise.
Like I said, we shouldn't have waited this long to do this. But if you're ever open to having another crack at being on the show for an interview and looking at some art, that'd be great. Or if you ever want to show a few pieces from the vault that you haven't shared on calf, I mean, that would make for a fun show. So. I mean, I'll always be open to having you on anytime that you would be up for it. I think this was, this has been a long show, but at the end of the day, one of the more well-attended ones we've had in a while. So I sincerely appreciate you taking the time tonight.
Well, again, thank you for having me. It's been my pleasure. I've had a blast, looking at all this great art, interacting with all the people. This has been a lot of fun and would definitely be up for doing something else in the future. So thank you very much.
Well, it's my pleasure, and I'm getting scolded by Jason for not having you on sooner.
Well, also thanks to Jason for helping to push this together. So
yeah, he did. He was like, "Why haven't you had Gene on?" I'm like, "I got a Post-it note around here that I've had for about a year, and your name was on that Post-it note." It's like I made a wish list one night, and I couldn't even tell you who the other 4 people were, but you were on it, and that Post-it note just kept getting moved and moved around on my desk for a year. And if I find it, I will prove it to you so we could see who else was on the list, because I bet I haven't gotten to them either. But no, I'm really glad that we did this. I really am. And,
likewise. And I do want to see that Moidoc T-shirt.
I'm gonna do it. I think that would be I think people would. Yeah, that would be such a surprise. Nobody tell Albert I'm gonna do it. All right, I'm gonna put this together. And whether if it doesn't happen at San Diego, maybe we'll have it happen at New York. But I think that would be so funny to have a dozen people wearing a Moidoc shirt coming in and having Albert see it and making him sign it too. That would become a collectible.
Well, sign me up, because I'm going. So I'd be happy to represent.
That sounds perfect. All right, Gene. Well, listen, this has been again 10 tons of fun for me, and there's. You have a collection that I know I'm not the only one that's admired it on calf for years, but I'm glad we got to talk about it tonight. So thank you so much, and thank you for everybody for tuning in tonight. This was a really a great chat for me, and I'm glad you all took the time out to partake in it as well and contribute to the chat. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
All right.